Chapter 771, Treasure-Seeking Sect Leader. These are three of my good friends, Fairy Lining, Long Guang, Ruan Yuxian. With their help, I believe that there will be no problems with our trip to the ruins this time. Elder Su said respectfully. The sect leader's gaze swept across the trio. In front of him, the female and two males stood together. The female was beautiful with bright eyes, white teeth, and fine pale skin. One of the males was brawny, and had skin as black as coal with bright eyes. The other was dressed like a middle-aged scholar. His hand held a fan, and his eyes flashed with light. The sect leader nodded inwardly. These three were strong, especially that middle-aged scholar who was the strongest of the trio. The other was probably just a sliver weaker than himself. Heartleaf Diana Temple had pitifully few experts. Other than himself and Elder Su, the others were not of any renown. But with these three strong reinforcements, he couldn't help but have more hope about the trip to the ruins this time. We will trouble you on this trip. If there are any gains on this trip, our sect will have other methods of compensation. The sect leader said seriously. Sect leader is too polite. The one that spoke was Ruan Yuxian. He waved his fan. His voice was light as he said, Brother Su and I have been friends for decades and are like brothers. We will not refuse Brother Zu's request. Also, we cannot turn down the offer that sect leader has made. Lining smiled. Long Guang was motionless like granite. The sect leader laughed upon hearing this. He had a good impression of Ruan Yuxian. He said, Brother Yuan is charming. We are early, your residences have been arranged. If you have anything you need, please speak. If I am absent, find Elder Su. You are good friends, do not be courteous. Ruan Yuxian and the others stated their thanks. A disciple quickly ushered the three away. When there was only the sect leader and Elder Su left in the hall, the sect leader nodded in praise. You did good regarding this matter. With the help of these three people, maybe we can come back with 1 or 2 treasures. Elder Su said respectfully, this is because sect leader is decisive that this matter is successful. These three usually are proud. If they did not see sect leader's courage and wisdom, would they have agreed? The sect leader was in a good mood. He said with a smile, I know how hard you worked. Then his expression became stern. He said in a grave voice, this time is an opportunity to us. This will decide if our Heartleaf Diana sect can rise. We must keep this a secret. An imperceptible light flashed through Elder Zu's eyes. He hurriedly said, Sect leader is wise. Mo curiously played with the green strand in his hand. The green strand was extremely thin. When the 7-li strand was wrapped around his wrist, it was just a thin line and appeared like a green bracelet. After the green strand begged for mercy, a gooey's gray mist retreated back into the undying ghost. The green strand docilely landed in Mo's hand. After playing with it for a long time, Mo still didn't know what it was. It was extremely thin and light, but strong. No matter how hard he pulled, it would not snap. What was most unique was the green crescent energy it could release. This kind of green crescent energy was powerful and unstoppable. It could match Wei Xing's sword energy. While he did not know what it really was, it was clear that this was a rare treasure. Its consciousness which begged for mercy shocked Mo. This immediately caused him to think of another thing he had, the 3,000 threads of worry. The 3,000 threads of worry could also communicate mentally. Mo tried to use his consciousness to communicate, but the effect was not visible. Yet when he switched to using Shun power, he seemed to see countless minuscule characters. This scene only happened once. Afterwards, no matter how much Shin power he channeled, it never appeared again. Even though it was just an instant, Mo still was able to memorize those characters. Mo then found that the green strand contained faint Shin power that allowed it to channel Shin power. Mo tried. The green strand could tolerate as much Shin power as he could put in. It had to be said that anything that could hold up under such pure Shin power was a treasure at present. This kind of treasure was suitable to forging Shin device raiments. Mo also suspected that this green strand was something from the ancient era. Mo's thoughts moved. A thread of Shin power was channeled in, and the green strand bracelet on his wrist suddenly released a string of green energies. They flew into the Black Sea. The green energy was an offensive Shun technique. While it was not a perfect Shun technique, Zhuo Emo was certain of this. When the green strand was completely uncoiled to its 7 li length and its body floated in the air, an unique feeling came from the green strand on his hand. As its body continued to tremble, it was like an invisible hand that constantly absorbed power from the surroundings. Then, through a unique transformation, the power was released as the green energy. Such a strange thing. Zhuo Emo couldn't help but tsk in wonder. It was the first time he saw something so unique. The Black Sea flight route had such a dangerous thing. No wonder even Fanshu Xiaoxia would die. It was not hard to understand how a Fanshu Xiaoxia of the past that cultivated Ling power would be killed if they were the least bit careless. Zhuo Emo's interest in the Black Sea grew. This unique and unfathomable black-colored sea was endless. Its environment was terrible and filled with danger. But from the opposite viewpoint, if it wasn't for this dangerous environment and those mysterious dangerous beings, this place would have been searched from top to bottom by those large sections. Dangerous things like the green strand that could release Shun techniques were an impossible obstacle to the Xiaoxia of the Ling power era. In other words, this meant that the Black Sea was a treasure trove that had not yet been opened. It was likely that other things like the green strand still existed. Those were all treasures. He also had a treasure seeker like Lil Black, a group of powerful sidekicks. If he missed this chance, it would be a great pity. Lao De Guang, who was restrained by Jinji, was completely docile. There was only one question rolling around in his mind. What were the origins of this terrifying group? He gaped when seeing the power of these people when they fought the green strand. He who had been able to earn the moniker, Shadowless Ghost Hand, and was definitely not a country bumpkin. But he only had one feeling now as he watched these people. He truly was an ignorant country bumpkin. When Wei Sheng's sword strike appeared, his mind became completely blank. He almost suffocated under the pressure. Even now, when he thought of that astounding blow, his heart couldn't help but tremble. Kunlun. The first thought through his mind was that only Kunlun had such terrifying sword Xiao. Yet what puzzled him was Zhong Rush's shout. He lived in the 9 Great Diana sects and was as familiar as one could be with the Diana cultivation. He knew the name of every Diana Xiao that was slightly famous. When did such a great Diana Xiao appear? After living so long in the 9 Great Diana sects, just his shout was enough to prove that this withered man was unfathomably powerful. No matter how hard he thought, he could not find this person. Had such a great Diana Xiao just appeared out of nowhere? As to that brute force woman that had knocked him unconscious, he only had one thought: how fortunate he had not struggled back then. Lao De Guang carefully inspected the fleet. He found that all of the people who had not participated had calm expressions and maintained their calm from beginning to end during the encounter. They appeared to be experts. Thinking about his prideful expression when he had given his nickname, Lao De Guang felt embarrassed. Any of the people who had fought was enough to make the 9 Great Diana sects shake. Now a whole group had appeared. He didn't know to describe them. In any case, his thoughts of fleeing immediately dissipated. He did not feel that he could escape from this group of freaks with his measly skills. Or he had never thought there would be a day that he would admit his skills were measly. Crying on the inside, Lao De Guang had to consider an even more pragmatic question. How could he keep himself alive while in the hands of these freaks? A person who could receive the name Shadowless Ghost Hand might not be strong, but his mind was not lacking. Did these people come for the ruins from the start? The idea flashed through his mind, and he grabbed it. Such a group of freakishly powerful people was enough to destroy smaller sections. They would not appear at the 9 Great Diana sects without any reason. The more he thought, the more he felt this was right. This definitely was the reason. He felt slightly reassured. To speak of nothing else, he believed not many could compare to him in terms of information. He was still valuable to this group. As long as he was valuable, he would have a chance of staying alive. Lao De Guang decided to find a chance to display his value. He had been secretly gathering intelligence on the ruins. They had not questioned him in detail last time, and he had kept many secrets. Come ask me. Come ask me. I have a lot of information. Lao Guang screamed inside. 1 day passed, 2 days, 3 days. This group of people seemed to forget him. No one paid any attention to him. Lao Guang felt puzzled. Had these people not come for the ruins? He found that Zuermo seemed to be search for something on the Black Sea every day. Was their goal the Black Sea flying route? The pitiful Lao Guang would never expect that the fleet with Zuermo as its leader had entered a state of treasure hunting. Zuermo's greedy and desirous gaze wanted to sweep through all of the Black Sea. If he could find a few more treasures like the Green Strand, maybe he could gather the materials to forge a Shin device raiment. Lil Black's antennae finally started to wave furiously in one direction. Cheers immediately sounded through the entire fleet. Everyone was spirited. Even a person as calm as Zhong Ru became excited. The fleet quickly flew in the direction pointed out by Lil Black. Chapter 772, Glittering the Dark Night was illuminated by the lights of the spells and Shen techniques. They collided in the air like fireworks, giving off great explosions that made people's ears hurt. Waves of air twisted the night, and everything in view seemed to be twisted. Inside the Jinji, everyone had an excited expression. Their faces were twisted, tendons bulging as they focused. Pay attention. Pay attention. First group, pay attention to cutting off the enemy's left flank. Second group, control your Shen power. Do not fight too strongly, pay attention to shifts. Fourth and fifth Jinji group, did you eat? Why are your attacks so weak? Attack at full power. I won't forgive you if you let even one escape. Ma Fan calmly observed the battlefield. His orders flowed into every corner of the Jinji defense line. Among Mo Cloud Sea's battle generals, there were several that were skilled in defense such as Shu Long's guard camp and Tang Fei's Tongzi battalion. Yet Ma Fan was the strangest one among them. He was the battle general most skilled in Jinji battle defense. Because he had successfully stopped Su Kong Temple's battalions in the past which unearthed Ma Fan's talent in defense, he had then been sent to Orchid Home Jie where he defended against Tian Huan's Gongya Shao Rong by relying on the Jinji forts. He had developed a great interest in how to use the seal formations and Jinji. Formations and Jinji were one of Mo Cloud Sea's developmental focuses. Zuermo's turtle style had influenced them deeply. The interested Ma Fan spent a great amount of time in Golden Crow Cloud Island to study Jinji and formations. Any formation defense line in his hands would have astounding power. He was familiar with the weakness and strengths of every kind of seal formation and could use them. Also, his experiences as part of the offensive corps gave him a good understanding on the large-scale strategy of how to use seals and Jinji. His second-in-command, Nian Lu, was skilled in calculation and aided him greatly. Lei Peng was the head of the axe hidden in the turtle shell. The battlefield was silently changing. This kind of change was subtle and almost no one detected it among the chaotic battlefield. But Ma Fan detected it. The two enemy battalions were not in sync and an opening in their formation had begun to appear. Ma Fan's eyes suddenly lit up. His voice unconsciously increased, and his orders became brisk. First crux, attack at full power. Third group, delay your enemies. Seventh group, weaken your attacks, draw them in. Third group, sixth group, pay attention, prepare to kill. The members under his command were familiar with his change. Everyone knew that when Darren's orders became short, it meant that the crucial moment in the battle had come. Everyone felt their minds become alert, and the formation defense line immediately changed. However, it was also difficult to detect this change among the storm of spells. Waiting for his orders, Lei Peng was completely armored. The Mo Cloud Shen equipment covering all of his large and brawny body. He had a golden crystal sword in his hand. He appeared like a giant stepping out of a legend as he gave off a bloodthirsty and savage presence. Beside him, 200 elites were also fully armored and stood silently. He was prepared to fight. They've been drawn in. Big Peng kill? Lei Peng's eyes suddenly grew bright, his presence increasing. He lifted the heavy gold crystal sword as though it was nothing and changed towards the formation defense line like a furious rhino. Kill? The 200 elite moved at the same time and howled together, Kill. The troops were like a sharp and heavy axe that was swung in an overhead blow at the prey that was caught in a net. The battalion that had been allowed in had never expected enemies to come charging out of the enemy defense line. Caught off guard, blood and flesh flew. Lei Peng was like an ancient monster, unstoppable as he charged every which way. The Shin equipment he wore had been designed and forged according to his strengths. It only had one use, to increase Lei Peng's power fivefold. Lei Peng was naturally endowed with astounding strength, and it became even greater after Mo matrices were engraved. Zhua Mo had switched out the spell he cultivated into a Mo skill a long time ago. After he used Mo embryo, he managed to cultivate a power-type Mo physique that increased his strength by multiple times again. Zhua Mo was determined for him to become a power-type. The Lei Peng of the past had a terrifying amount of strength, but after he cultivated the Mo Cloud Shin methodology, Lei Peng's strength went up another level. Lei Peng's Shin power was the simplest, most direct, crudest, roughest, and purest of power. He had a door-sized golden crystal sword in his hand. When he started to swing it, no one was able to stop his attack. He did not like using stabs. In his hand, the golden crystal sword was like a thick horse-chopping saber. What he liked to do most was chop. Usually, when his blow fell, the enemy, rider and steed, would be split in two. When he was really in his state, he would even use the sword like a metal staff, slapping and whipping. Anyone that was touched would fly out as though they were hit by a rhino. A large part of their body strangely caved in, as they bled for all orifices. Clang. Lei Peng's hand shook. For the first time since the battle started, someone stopped his sword. His eyes bled red. He saw the person that stopped him. It was one of the Mo marshals. This time was when Lei Peng's fighting spirit was at its height. Even if the other was a Mo marshal, he did not feel fear. With an angry howl, he swung the golden crystal sword up, and swung at the other, throwing himself behind the sword. Good attack? The Mo marshal snorted. The spear in his hand suddenly turned bright silver, an extremely blinding point of light suddenly appearing in front of Lei Peng's eyes. This dot of silver energy came quickly like lightning. Everyone who was within 10 li was pulled towards this spear. Lei Peng's surrounding soldiers seemed to have a feeling that this dot of silver light had a strange magnetic force. Their bodies seemed to be flying uncontrollably towards the dot of silver like moths to a flame. A feeling of extreme danger suddenly took over their minds. They paled in shock. At this time, a wild, angry shout exploded in their ears. Lei Peng's eyes were wide in anger, his Shin equipment flashing with bright red light. Every drop of power in every Mo matrix on his body, every muscle, bone and sinew, gathered on the golden crystal sword in his hand. It was a power pure and without any finesse. Only power. Boom. A thick drum-like sound echoed, like muffled thunder deep within the clouds. This could be heard by everyone within 100 li. A shocking, unstoppable wave of air swept in all directions like a wall of iron. All of the seal formations and Jinji within 5 li were destroyed. Those with slower reactions had to face the shock wave of air head-on and were immediately wounded. Those smarter let themselves fly out with the wave of air. There was nothing left within 5 li. The golden crystal sword was completely shattered. Lei Peng was thrown out like a sandbag. His Shin equipment was cracked all over, blood streaming out. He was covered in blood. At the place where the fight had been, the Mo marshal stood holding the spear, motionless. The entire battlefield was silent. Everyone was stunned by this astounding collision. Suddenly, with a snap, a fragment fell from the long spear to the ground. This seemed to be a signal. Crack, the entire spear crumbled. The Mo marshal was motionless as though he was made from stone. Everyone looked uncertainly at the Mo marshal, their hearts in their throat. At this time, the Mo marshal fell and crashing with a boom. Darren! Countless Mo soldiers wailed in sorrow and disbelief. Yet the Mo marshal who had fallen down did not respond. Ha ha! Lei Peng struggled up as he laughed wildly. He suddenly tore off the shattered Shin equipment he wore. People found out their shock that Lei Peng was covered in blood. They were even able to see the wounds that were seeping blood all over his body. Lei Peng seemed to not notice them. He took out a new set of Shen equipment and put it on, ignoring the blood flowing out of him. Then he took out a large axe from his ring that was the size of a door. Holding the large axe, blood pooling under his feet, Lei Peng walked forward. He suddenly raised the axe in his hand and shouted like a wild beast, "Kill!" Inside the seal formation, Nian Lu wiped away cold sweat. This guy's gone crazy today. Ma Fan frowned. He was the strongest and he saw the most. The MO Marshal had been overconfident and hadn't expected that someone would take the path of only pursuing strength and even manage to reach such a level. Lei Peng's attack had gathered all of his strength. Even Boss, who was famed for his strength, would not choose to face it head-on. Power defeating all methods, Lei Peng was what the phrase referred to. In terms of cultivation and skill, the MO Marshal was much greater than Lei Peng. Yet he chose to fight Lei Peng in strength. Wasn't that just looking for death? Ma Fan shook his head. He knew what the MO Marshal had intended. The MO Marshal had thought to increase morale through this action, but hadn't expected to meet such an unreasonable person like Lei Peng. Have him withdraw, Ma Fan said unquestionably. There was a 5 li opening in the seal formation Jinji. This meant that the previous arrangements had to be adjusted. A damaged defense line meant more weaknesses, but there was nothing to be done about it. High-level experts were enough to affect the state of a battle. Also, the enemy had lost a MO Marshal. In terms of damage inflicted, they had benefited greatly. The enemy had not just lost a MO Marshal. With the way that the MO fought, this meant that when the MO Marshal died, the offensive ability of the battalion would decrease precipitously. The death of a MO Marshal was like losing a flank, but in addition what it shook was morale. Morale was something intangible but of crucial importance to victory or defeat. The more intense the battle, the greater its effects. Even if the enemy still had one more MO Marshal, Ma Fan perceptively detected that the enemy morale was now low and the other MO Marshal was stunned by the results of this battle. He did not respond immediately. The enemy was in a short burst of chaos. Opportunity. Ma Fan unhesitatingly adjusted his orders. The chaotic MO battalions immediately were inundated with strong attacks. When the remaining MO Marshal reacted, he found that the enemy had grabbed hold of his battalion. If they wanted to retreat, the fatalities would be terrifying. Damn it! How could it be like this? His complexion turned gray. Chapter 773 Enemy Encounter. After flying for a while, sounds of intense fighting could be heard from in front of them. Everyone was experienced in battle and could clearly recognize the sound of talisman attacks within. The entire fleet went on their guard. Were other people like them, coming to explore this treasure trove? From the distance of the sound, the other was hundreds of li away. If it wasn't for the vast and open sea surface, the direction of the wind, and their sensitive hearing, they might not have detected it. The fleet was fast and the hundreds of li would be traveled in a few moments. The guards in the fleet were on their high alert and prepared to fight. When Zue Mo and the others arrived and saw the situation, they were astonished. An mountainous one-eyed octopus was half exposed in the water. Several Xiozhe were furiously attacking the octopus. Is this really an octopus? Zue Mo waved at the enormous body of the octopus and swallowed. Just the portion of the octopus that was out of the water was over 200 zhang. Those Xiozhe around it were small like flies in comparison. Just the part of the body that was exposed to the air was already so large. The enormity of its entire body could be imagined. Anyone who faced such an enormous monster couldn't help but inhale and feel as though it was an unwinnable battle. How long has it lived to grow so large? Tseng Lianer had an expression of awe. Having growing up in the MO territories, she had seen countless dangerous beings, but it was the first time she was seeing one so large. Azwa, be careful, this octopus is at least tens of thousands years old. Weiss' warning caused Zwamos to shudder. Tens of thousands years old? 1,000-year tortoises, 10,000-year-old turtles. How come it is older than a turtle? Zwamo's little heart shook. Any kind of being, if they lived for thousands of years, would become powerful. Those that lived for tens of thousands of years, and in such a terrible environment like the Black Sea, this guy's strength. Leave before it takes notice of you. Any being that has survived for tens of thousands of years will match you in intelligence. Pu Yao also warned. Pu and Weiss' opinions were in rare agreement, and Zhou Mo immediately felt the urge to retreat. He liked treasure, but he would not gamble with his life. Also, the chances of victory appeared pitiful. The attacks of the Xiozhi did not cause any reaction when they landed on the octopus. The octopus had a layer of gleaming sticky fluid. When talismans hit it, they were deflected or they would glance off. Some would even be destroyed against it. Such a dangerous being should not be provoked. Suddenly, Wei Xing lowered his voice and said murderously, "Shitty, those seem like Kunlun sword Xiao." Kunlun. Zhou Mo's body shook. His attention had all been on the octopus and, upon close inspection, he found that those people were Kunlun's sword Ziwi. Zhou Mo's eyes suddenly became tinged with blood. Their grudge with Kunlun was irreconcilable. "Xixiang, this octopus is too strong. We cannot do anything to it." His voice was panicked. They had attacked this octopus for a full 2 hours and just left a few minor wounds on its body. Xiao Rujian was also slightly panicked inside, but he knew that he could not panic. He forced his expression to remain calm. "Everyone, do not panic, let's try other things. This is soul-luring fragrance, a treasure that I begged Master for a long time in order to obtain. Even the strongest monster, if it is afflicted with the soul-luring fragrance, will not recover its senses for 6 hours." Yu Ming said helplessly, "I tried everything that could be done, they are useless." Xiao Rujian gritted his teeth. He turned to say to another Shi, "And hi, didn't your master leave you 100 fiend soul-destroying sword pill? Use that." And Hai had a pained expression. However, he had already done everything else that he could. Xiao Xixiang's soul-luring fragrance was extremely valuable, and if they wasted this opportunity, they would definitely regret it. This octopus was at least 10,000 years old, and its entire body was treasure. All right. Once Hai made a decision, he did not hesitate. A yellow bead the size of a bean appeared on his hand. The bead flashed with color, and a faint layer of mist surrounded it when it was taken out. Xiao Ruhai and the others became alert. They were knowledgeable. The 100 fiend soul-destroying sword pill of their sect was a secret method. The number of elders with the power to forge this could be counted using the fingers. That faint layer of mist was actually the movement of countless ice-cold sword essences. Hai's face flushed, the spell on his hand changing. He shouted clearly, "Go!" The sword pill turned into an imperceptible light that entered the body of the octopus. The octopus, who had remained unresponsive until now, finally reacted. It furiously twisted its body, shaking the water. Its enormous body contained endless power. Xiao Rujian and the other had expressions of joy. They knew that this was the 100 fiend soul-destroying sword pill destroying the life inside the octopus. The forging process of the 100 fiend soul-destroying sword pill was extremely cruel. It needed to take the savage and hateful thoughts of Ling beasts raised, then using an Yin method it was forged into sword essence and sealed within the pill. It would destroy the soul of the enemy when used, a terrifying weapon. Xiao Rujian and the others hurriedly flew away to avoid being struck by the octopus. If they were whipped by such a large body, their bones might be crushed. After a whole hour, the octopus thrashing quieted. Xiao Ruhai and the others had joyful expressions. Then they quickly found that they were still unable to cut open the body of the octopus. Also, the attacks they had used previously had used up much of their power. That sticky fluid on it is strange. Easy warned. At this time, Hai suddenly noticed the fleet in the distance. His expression changed slightly and he said, "Xixiang. Other people have come." Xiao Rujian and the others stilled. The dangerous reputation of the Black Sea flight route was known far and wide that there was basically none who dared to come. If it was not for their wealth of talismans and the increase in their strength in the last recent while, Xiao Rujian and the others would not dare to rashly go into the Black Sea. Xiao Rujian was the leader and organizer of this Black Sea trip. He had read in the memoirs of a Kunlun elder about the dangers in the Black Sea flight route. It had mentioned that the other had encountered an octopus that had survived for at least tens of thousands of years. Xiao Rujian was a smart and attentive person. He noted down the information and then started to gather and investigate the materials available on the Black Sea flight route. When he started to cultivate Shen power and thought back to the records, he had a daring idea. That octopus might be a being from the ancient era. Ancient and dangerous beings cultivated Shen power, which was so powerful it was not something that Ling power and Sword Xiu could defeat. He continued to research, which seemed to support his finding. There were some dangerous beings with Shen power which lived in the Black Sea. As his Shen power increased, Xiao Rujian realized that the chance of this was great. For Sword Xiu that cultivated Ling power, it was a place of certain death, but for the present group that cultivated Shen power, it was a land of treasure. He slowly prepared, found fellow disciples with the same intentions as him, and arranged the trip as well as the supplies they needed to advance another level in power. After preparing all of this, Xiao Rujian finally embarked on the trip to the Black Sea. According to information in the memoirs of the elder, Xiao Rujian's group quickly found that terrifying octopus tens of thousands of years. Everything after had proceeded smoothly and Xiao Rujian's soul-luring fragrance was especially effective, yet what happened next was like throwing a bucket of cold water on the happy faces of everyone there. They were unable to do anything against this octopus that had stopped fighting back. They could not do anything to it or fatally injure it. The soul-luring crystal was only effective for 6 hours. After the 6 hours passed, they could only flee. The fiend's soul-destroying sword pill made them happy for a moment, but then they found that they were no better off than before. At this time, they found Zhumo's group. Xiao Rujian's mind moved. He lowered his voice. "This is an opportunity. We will trick them into helping us deal with the octopus." He then asked in a low voice, "Is Shimmy's circular fiend sword formation still here?" He imperceptibly nodded. "Here. Later, pay attention to my finger. If my pinky curls, Shimmy, immediately activate the circular fiend sword formation to trap them." The circular fiend sword formation is the masterpiece of He Shi Shu. That last "ha" came from Xiao Rujian's mouth murderously. And Wei said after a moment of silence, "That is not very good." Xiao Rujian knew if he could not persuade everyone, this would fail. He thought and then said, "Then let's trap them first. After we finish, we will let them out and give them something in return." The other people's expressions eased and they nodded in agreement. Everyone knows the state of our Kunlun right now. This octopus is of crucial importance to the sect. Do not be soft-hearted at this time. Do not underestimate them. To be able to travel the Black Sea flight route, they must be capable. Xiao Rujian warned them. "Xixiang is right. We will listen to Xixiang." Everyone thought of the recent sacrifices that countless elders had made with their lives, and felt ashamed. They had been soft-hearted about such an important matter. Seeing everyone in consensus, Xiao Rujian sighed in relief. He turned around, and there was a friendly smile on his face. He raised his voice to shout, "Friend, where are you from?" Kunlun disciple Xiao Rujian greets you. This one has encountered some trouble here. Will you be able to help? Kunlun will give you great thanks. Xiao Rujian was friendly but not servile. He believed that most people would give him some face based on the name of Kunlun. They also believed that anyone that dared to go against Kunlun had not been born yet. As expected, the other immediately responded. "We have admired Kunlun for many years. Seeing everyone today, you really have the mannerisms of a famed sect. It is our honor to make your acquaintance. You are too polite, do not mention any thanks." As they spoke, the fleet flew near Xiao Rujian's group. Xiao Rujian's gaze swept the people on the ships and found that there was a heterogeneous group of people. He relaxed slightly and his smile grew. Chapter 774, Shock. What? Hai Jin Yun abruptly stood up with shock and fury on his face. His voice became sharp and ear-piercing. "Defeated? You say they were defeated? 2 MO marshals fighting a guy that no one even knew the name of before, and they were defeated?" Hai Jin Yun became more excited as he spoke, his gold face full of murderousness. His eyes were cold and his tone became cruel and emotionless. "Where are they? Have them come see me." Hai Jin Yun and Shang Yusheng were responsible for leading this campaign. They could order anyone on the front lines of the MO Martial Alliance, and they could also punish anyone. 2 MO Marshals leading 2 full battalions to fight a single battalion that didn't even have a top battle general. Even if the other had the SEAL formation defense line, their advantage was absolute. Hai Jin Yun was filled with murderousness. The 2 MO Marshals had no reason to be defeated. In his view, there were only 2 reasons that they would lose with such a great advantage. One was because their forces were cowardly, the other because they were useless. Neither was a reason he could tolerate. The MO Colonel bent his head and said with a hint of grief, "The 2 Darren died in battle." Hai Jin Yun's expression froze on his face. At the side, Shang Yusheng also had a surprised expression. While the times had changed, and MO Marshals were not as valuable as before, it was still rare for MO Marshals to die in battle. The Shen era had just started, and there were just a rare few outstanding geniuses that had caught up to the last era's power. The great majority of people were still struggling at the lower levels. A thin camel was still bigger than a horse. While MO Marshals' position had fallen from being the best fighters to being first-class fighters, they were still strong. Died in combat, that meant they had not retreated. The death of any MO Marshal in combat could not be dismissed. They were not surprised by Quan Pei's death because his opponent had been Bihan. MO Marshals did not have the ability to fight back a top battle general. But Ma Fan, who was he? This person was not among the 10 great generals of the Xiuzhi world, and the amount of intelligence they had about this person was pitifully small. They only knew he was skilled in defense and had followed Zhuo for a long time. They didn't know anything else. Was the Ma Fan battalion a decoy? And the one in charge was actually Gong Suncha? Even now, Hai Jin Yun could not believe this. Shang Yusheng suddenly spoke, his tone as slow as usual, described the events in detail. They formed a SEAL formation defense line, and Ma Fan battalion went on the defensive relying on that. The 2 Darren discussed and thought that we had the advantage, so they attacked. Because the enemy battalion did not have many people, the 2 Darren chose 6 positions to attack. Each good for breakthroughs to put pressure on the enemy. When the battle started, we quickly gained the upper hand. However, the enemy was hardy and the fighting was intense. This lucky survivor showed sorrow, his tone deep. After about an hour, the battle proceeded about the same as any offensive on a city. The 2 Darren thought that the enemy might have used up its energy and decided to put on more pressure. At this time, the other finally showed a weakness. Yu Darren is the strongest in breakthrough, and he did not hesitate to lead his elites to charge in. No one expected that it was the enemy's trap. There were demons here. They were truly demons. The MO Colonel's tone became excited, his lips trembling, his body shuddering, and his eyes filled with shock. Hai Jin Yu and Shang Yusheng exchanged a look. Both of them felt intimidated. "Calm down," Hai Jin Yun shouted sternly. The MO Colonel seemed to wake up and had an ashamed expression. However, his voice still trembled. There was an elite troop waiting in the trap. When Yu Darren and the others charged in, this elite force suddenly charged out. The soldier at the front could not be stopped. He was ferocious, and no one could stop even one of his attacks. Yu Darren found the situation was dangerous and went out to intercept him. The 2 met in a single clash. The MO Colonel's body trembled even more violently. And then? Hai Jin Yun couldn't help asking. And then Yu Darren died. 2 streams of tears fell from the MO Colonel's eyes. Hai Jin Yun and Shang Yusheng changed expression. The 2 exchanged a look and saw the shock in each other's eyes. To kill MO Marshal with one attack, what kind strength would it take? They had never thought that someone would cultivate such a freakish path. Was that person wounded? Shang Yusheng couldn't resist asking. The MO Colonel worked through his sorrow and tried to think back. That person was also injured and covered in blood. However, this person was courageous and strong. He did not retreat. He changed his Shin equipment and continued to fight. When Darren died, everyone's morale plummeted. The battlefield was chaotic, and most of us were quickly killed. Then Darren? How did he die? Hai Jin Yun asked urgently. The death of Yu Darren was a great shock to Darren. The enemy was very strong and stuck themselves to Darren's battalion. He Darren's battalion seemed to be stuck in a bog and could not escape. The situation was chaotic at the time, and our battalion was scattered. No one fully knows what happened. I heard an enormous explosion, and then realized that he Darren most likely. Hai Jin Yun and Shang Yusheng sank into silence. The hall was so quiet that the drop of a pin on the ground could be heard. What the MO colonel had described was an unparalleled shock to the two. The two of them were in great turmoil. One Ma Fan was so strong. Then what about the other battalions in Bihan's command? They found now that they had made a grave mistake. They had kept their eyes on Bihan and dismissed the other battalions under his command. A person's reputation, a tree's shadow, the halo of Bihan being a top battle general had masked the strength of the other people. Psychologically and strategically, the MO Martial Alliance had focused all of their power on Bihan. If Bihan's other battalions had such power, then the two of them had a bad feeling. Hai Jin Yun, Shang Yusheng, and Bihan as well as others probably would never have thought that their battle was being observed by so many important people. MO Cloud Sea was small but it was strong. They had not made any great moves in the last few years, and their suddenly move this time naturally attracted the attention of many factions. The intelligence on Ma Fan's battle immediately ended up in the hands of the major factions through a number of channels. Gongya Xiaorong carefully read the report. His calm expression changed slightly. Xixiang, what do you think? Li Xian Air had been paying attention all this time to Gongya Xiaorong's expression. Gongya Xiaorong's return had caused a significant ripple, but compared to his glory days of the past, no one had much interest in someone that had been defeated. But inside Tianhuan, Gongya Xiaorong's status had not changed at all. Both the sect leader and Li Xian Air, the future sect leader, could see that the setback this time had caused Gongya Xiaorong to transform. When Gongya Xiaorong led the remains of his battalion across mountains and oceans, through countless difficult obstacles to return to Tianhuan, the sect leader only said, Xiaorong's accomplishment will be limitless. Gongya Xiaorong seemed to be a completely different person. There was none of his past pride, arrogance, and imperiousness. He was low-key and tolerant, uncaring of the gossip within the sect. He also became unprecedentedly hardworking. He mastered Shen power at an astounding speed and adjusted to fighting with Shen power. The sect leader's trust in him did not decrease at all. He still had great authority. He usually stayed in the sect and silently started to rebuild his battalion. With the remains of his past battalion as the skeleton, a completely new battalion took form as he cultivated daily. Li Xian Air saw everything. She knew that Xiaorong Xixiang only needed a chance for the world to see him again, a chance for him to make his way back into the top battle general rankings. He was already prepared. So when he saw the slight surprise on Xiaorong Xixiang's face, she was slightly surprised. Xiaorong Xixiang had become low-key and humble in these years, and was a composed person, giving the impression nothing could cause him to change expression. The surprise flashed across Gongya Xiaorong's face before his expression recovered. He has become stronger. Stronger? Li Xian Air paused. I fought against him in the past. Gongya Xiaorong's voice was still cock. He is much stronger now. Compared to Xixiang? Li Xian Air deliberately asked. Gongya Xiaorong smiled but did not speak. Xixiang, tell me. Li Xiao Air grabbed Gongya Xiaorong's sleeve and furiously shook it. The two had grown up together and were like siblings. Affection and helplessness flashed across Gongya Xiaorong's face. At the same time, a burning fighting spirit flashed through his eyes. He said calmly, Gong Suncha is really strong. Li Xian Air was puzzled. They were clearly talking about Ma Fan. Why was Xixiang talking about Gong Suncha? Ma Fan and the other battle generals were taught by Gong Suncha. This is why I say that Gong Suncha is strong, Gongya Xiaorong explained. No one can compare to Gong Suncha in this, not even Xue Dong. Gong Suncha is equal to two top battle generals. Li Xian Air saw Xixiang admired Gong Suncha so much and pouted, then why is his ranking lower than Xue Dong? At this level, the difference between the two is minuscule. Unless they fight, no one knows who will win. Even if they fight, There are many factors affecting victory and defeat that are beyond the control of people. There is no meaning in stronger or weaker. Battle generals are of strategic value. However, Gong Sun-cha is strong in that he is skilled in training battle generals. These battle generals might not become top battle generals, but they can become first-class battle generals. For example, this Ma Fan. With this strength, he is definitely first-class. First-class battle generals are not so attention-catching as top battle generals, but for a top battle general, the one with more first-class battle generals under their command will have more of an advantage and have more tactics to choose from. Look, other than Ma Fan, he has trained many others, for example, Shu Long, Tang Fei, Sherdong, and Ajagu. These are all first-class battle generals. This is like playing with cards. As you play, without realizing it, his hand of bad cards has become a hand of good cards. This is what is terrifying about him. Gongya Xiaorong said meaningfully. Chapter 775, Act. The fleet quickly flew next to the big octopus under Zhuo-Mo's orders. Hey, is this guy asleep? Zhuo-Mo pretended to be curious and drooled as he came close. A hint of dislike flashed through the eyes of He Zi and the others. They were from large sects and instinctively disliked the common presence that Zhuo-Mo had. Xiao Rujian did not show any of disdain and said with a smile, "We have stunned it, and its senses are blocked. However, this guy has thick skin, please help us. We will thank you well after this. We Kunlun are honest, do not worry." Stunned? Zhuo-Mo's expression was curious but slightly worried. Will it suddenly wake up? Such a big guy, if it wakes up, none of us will be able to escape. Xiao Ruhai felt pressed for time, but did not show it. He knew that he had to ease these people's worries for them to work hard. He explained, "Our sect's soul-luring fragrance can seal the senses any monster no matter how strong it is, much less this octopus. We have at least 4 more hours. In these 4 hours, it definitely will not wake up." So powerful. Zhuo-Mo had a shocked expression. Its soul-luring fragrance. Pu Yao was familiar with his past opponent. Maybe not 4 hours, but definitely 2. Receiving the information he wanted, Zhuo-Mo's smile became even warmer. "Alright, let's start." Xiao Rujian was overjoyed and said loudly, "Everyone, let's go together. After this, no one will leave with empty hands." Zhuo-Mo pushed up his sleeves and raised his arms as he shouted like a hoodlum, "Brother, it's our honor that a large sect like Kunlun is paying attention to us. If we don't work our hardest, we will disappoint these friends from Kunlun." Xiao Rujian and the others had small smiles. This person had a low-class presence, but he was perceptive and knew his own measure. He was filled with respect towards Kunlun. Xiao Rujian elegantly bowed. "This one will first thank you, brothers. If you need our aid in the future, please speak." Zhuo-Mo laughed. "Ha, Kunlun friends give us so much face, we cannot falter. Brothers, start." Xiao Rujian finally sighed in relief. They were finally going to start. Yet before he could react, a sharp coldness locked him in place without any warning. What was going on? He was astounded. The sharp killing intent burned as though he was within a smelting cauldron. The person who had looked like a low-class hoodlum seemed to completely change. His hand flashed with a golden energy that brimmed with murderousness. Damn it! They had been fooled. His head rang, but he reacted quickly. He was furious. "You dare!" The flying sword in his hand stabbed towards the other like lightning. In such an emergency, he did not spare any energy. A green sword energy lit up, and the space around him rippled and twisted. Shin power. The green sword energy contained pure Shin power. The Kunlun sword essence with Shin power was even more powerful, more varied, and harder to predict. Xiao Rujian was like an unpredictable shadow that almost broke free of Zhuo-Mo's presence lock. Zhuo-Mo's eyes lit up with threads of golden scripts. His Sun Shin power erupted, and the Shin technique was immediately completed in his hand. Sun Shin Thorn. A blinding spike of light like a ray of the sun flew out of his hand and shot at Xiao Rujian. The golden light accurately collided with Xiao Rujian's sword energy. Bam! The green sword energy was shattered like glass and turned into blue fragments. The fine fragments formed a little twister in the air, but did not affect the spike of light at all. The light spike was a bit dimmer, but it still flew at an astounding pace toward Xiao Rujian. Xiao Rujian paled. How was it possible? How was it possible? Everyone that happened in front of him made him almost unable to believe his eyes. His sword energy had been so easily shattered by the enemy. In Kunlun that was full of geniuses, Xiao Rujian had always been one of the top. He had a glorious history in the sect competitions. But there was no time to think in this situation. He was a decisive person. He knew that this was a time of life and death, and bit into his tongue. Blood that contained Shin power spread through his mouth. His eye flashed with a layer of green energy. The sword scripture he cultivated was Kunlun's 3 pure sword scripture. This sword scripture had not been important in the past, but in the process of being adapted for Shin power, the elders found to their shock that this minor sword scripture was actually very suited to Shin power. The status of 3 pure sword scripture rose. Many of Kunlun's disciples now cultivated this sword scripture. Xiao Ruhai was one of the leaders. He spent large amounts of time and energy on cultivating this sword scripture. He became the disciple that was publicly thought of having the most skill with 3 pure sword scripture. Vast Shin power flooded through his body. He felt he was unprecedentedly powerful. This technique risked his life but was able to increase his power in the short term, but the harm would be significant. Even if he won, he would have to rest and recuperate for at least half a year. Xiao Rujian had learned this move long ago, but had never used it. Resting for half a year versus losing his life, without needing to think, he knew what to choose. His mind was unprecedentedly focused. He pushed away all stray thoughts. He did not ask who these people really were, or why they had suddenly attacked. There was only that golden thorn in his eyes, the Sun Shin thorn. The lightning-fast Sun Shin thorn became extremely slow in his eyes. He could see every detail. The Sun Shin thorn was unlike their sword energies. It was so dense it was tangible, seeming to be made from gold. The thorn was covered in fine, exquisite patterns, and the ancient sun diagrams could be seen. The clearer he saw it, the more he could feel the great power it contained. How was the other able to do this? He lost some of his focus. Making Shun power tangible was one of the more common skills right now, but this Sun Shin thorn that seemed to be masterfully carved showed that the enemy's level at manifestation was far greater than he could imagine. His mind was clear. In just an instant, he knew that there was an uncrossable gap between himself and the enemy. Yet the vast power in his body broke free like a vicious beast. Strong fighting spirit rose from deep within. His death would not be a waste if he fought such a strong opponent. The terror deep in his eyes disappeared. Xiao Rujian suddenly shouted angrily. He released his restraint over the Shin power in his body. The unrestrained Shin power rampaged left and right in his body, like a caged tiger. Xiao Rujian's body seemed to be on fire. The Shen power that existed in every inch of his body was ignited and furiously burned. A layer of angry green energy appeared on the flying sword on his hand. It flickered like a green flame. Xiao Rujian's eyes were deep like the ocean. He raised the flying sword covered in green flames and stabbed. The green Shen power flaring around the sword undulated in ripples as it traveled from the hilt to the tip of the sword. When the flames reached the tip of the sword, the green energy that had finished preparing reached its greatest strength. It broke free of the sword tip and at an astounding speed flew towards Mo's snap. The flying sword in Xiao Rujian's hand cracked. Xiao Rujian's killing move had not finished. A stab. Another stab. His movements were peerlessly fast. In a blink, 3 successive stabs were completed. The killing move of the 3 pure sword scripture, one sword transforming to 3 pure. The 3 green sword energies flew towards Mo in a straight line. The flying sword in Xiao Rujian's hand lost all of its light. When the last stroke was finished, the sword shattered into countless pieces. The first green sword energy crashed onto the Sun Shin thorn. Bam! A burst of gold and green energies appeared in the air. Zhuo Mo's expression became serious. A beast fought the hardest when it was trapped. Even with his strength, he did not dare to be careless. At this time, the sword energies changed again. The third sword energy suddenly sped up and thrust into the second sword energy. The two sword energies merged into one. If Xiao Rujian's sword energies could be described as crystal-like before, then the sword energies now were like a furious wave of green sword essence. Countless sword essences were gathered within in layers that moved restlessly in waves. With every wave, it became stronger. What surprised Zhuo Mo was the rate it rose in power was very high. In a blink, this sword energy had multiplied in strength like a monster revealing its figure. Compared to Xiao Rujian's previous sword energy, this was tens of times stronger. Zhuo Mo shouted, his Sun Shen power vibrating. His expression was serious, golden scripts rising off his body and making him appear domineering. When the golden scripts appeared, Zhuo Mo's presence suddenly changed. A vicious and primitive presence covered the entire battlefield as though there was an ancient monster descending to the mortal realm. Xiao Rujian looked in disbelief at Zhuo Mo. This was a skill from the ancient era. The ancients' way of fighting had simple moves without too many flourishes. Their bodies were even stronger than those wasteland beasts. They had endless power, they could pluck suns and moons from the sky, they were the strongest of that era. That was an era which was like a riddle, one that countless people yearned for. Zhuo Mo was like a hero walking straight out of an ancient myth, like the totem warrior that the Sun tribe worshipped. An irresistible dominance, and a masculine and strong energy that was like the light of the sun which people could not avoid. Zhuo Mo's right hand flashed with bright golden energy. The golden scripts on his body slowly circulated, the light on his right hand flickering, and forming a simple axe. Zhuo Mo raised the golden axe of light high up. His entire body leaned forward slightly. He seemed to channel all of his strength into the simple axe he had raised. His eyes were wide, every muscle in his body was tense. A power to uproot mountains and an unrivaled presence. Just like the Sun tribe totem warrior of tens of thousands of years ago swinging the Sun Shen axe. Just as domineering like the Sun tribe totem warrior of tens of thousands of years ago. Looking down on all beings like the Sun tribe totem warrior of tens of thousands of years ago. The only difference was that this was his era. Strong belief and furious power was channeled into the Sun Shen axe in his hand. It swung downward. Chapter 776, Wei Sheng's sword. The green sword essence wave and the Sun Shen axe collided together in a show of brute force. Boom! Terrifying power exploded. The light was blinding like the sun and illuminated the world. When the light faded, Zhuo Mo's great figure appeared. He held the axe of light in his hand, his pressuring gaze was almost tangible as he slowly swept his gaze across the battlefield. He held Xiao Rujian's body in his left hand. Xiao Rujian had no signs of life. The light in Zhuo Mo's eyes gradually faded, the axe of light disappearing. The powerful presence he gave off also disappeared. He once again appeared like a common person. He breathed out lightly and shook his head. That Sun Shen axe was still a struggle for him. It was not as easy to use as the Sun Shen thorn. He could manifest that Sun Shen thorn, to the point that it seemed to be engraved with scripts, but he could only form the basic shape of the Sun Shen axe. Even the shape was lacking, not to mention the sun scripts. The Shen techniques of the ancient era were so simple. The more complete the technique, the more exquisite their shape was, and the more powerful they were. He was just starting out. Shaking his head, he looked towards everyone else. An ambush. Those prepared against those unprepared, He Zi and Hai and the others were just normal Kunlun disciples. They didn't have any ability to fight against Wei Sheng and Zhong Ru. An Hai's killing move, the 100 Fiend soul-destroying pill, had been used already. Zhong Ru's wish power wrapped around him and An Hai immediately lost his soul. He Zi's circular fiend sword formation just been activated as it was easily defeated by Wei Sheng's sword strike. Before they acted, Zhuo Mo had decided to not leave even one alive. Naturally, the Kunlun disciples' things were cleaned out. However, Zuo did not have the time to inspect them now. His attention was all on this ancient octopus. Eldest Xixiang, you try? Wei Xing nodded. The fight just now couldn't even be considered a warm-up to him. This mountainous octopus monster made him feel pressure and excited his fighting spirit. The god-killing blood sword in his hand, he flew in front of the octopus and stood gravely. Lightly raising the blood-red sword, Wei Xing's expression was solemn. His presence changed, and the air around him seemed to ripple in an indescribable manner. Marks of blood appeared on the sword. Wei Xing's presence continued to rise. He narrowed his eyes. He was like an unsheathed sword, full of edges and soul-shaking. Thick sword essence gathered around him. The sky above his head quickly became dark. The black sea under his feet rippled outwards, as if escaping from the danger. A deep hole formed in the water underneath Wei Xing. Standing as straight as a sword, Wei Xing suddenly opened his eyes. Hiss! An indescribable hiss. The void sword essence around Wei Xing gathered quickly towards him. He seemed to be the eye of the storm. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The sharp sword essence was like countless little swords that flew and howled around Wei Xing's body. The humming rose in volume and surged like the tide. Wei Xing lightly flicked the sword in his hand. Virm. Like streams and rivers flowing into the ocean, the sword essence flooded towards Wei Xing's blood sword furiously. The blood sword hummed in excitement, the marks of blood suddenly growing bright and filled with an eerie power. Wei Xing did not seem to detect the excitement of his blood sword. His expression was determined, and his eyes like bloodied pure glass. He inherited the power of the god-killing blood sword, but he had not been assimilated by the god-killing blood sword. His steel-like resolve allowed him to control this terrifyingly large power. A strange layer of red tinged Wei Xing's view. In his eyes, the blood sword in his hand was like an unwilling beast that constantly struggled. Feeling the world spread, Wei Xing's expression was devout and focused. No matter how the blood sword in his hand struggled, he did not seem to feel it. The eerie and frantic power battered him along the sword hilt. Its bloodthirst and madness made it unusually powerful. Wei Xing knew that if he let go at this time, the blood sword would definitely release an astounding strike. It had drank the blood of countless warriors, it had consumed innumerable fiend souls, it had grown through tens of thousands of years, it was powerful on its own. The frantic power battered Wei Xing's mind in waves. Wei Xing's blood and Shen power came from the blood sword, and was restless as well. It was a terrifying monster. If it was discontent, it would cause a backlash. Wei Xing did not let go. His expression was still devout and focused. Under the increased mental battering and emotional assault that came with each wave, he guarded his sword heart. Countless scenes flashed through his eyes. He saw the motivating gazes of sect leader and the Shishu, he saw the Wukong mountain of the past, he saw his own hardship as a sword servant, he saw himself drinking under the moon with Zuo. He moved through the scenes, they became dimmer and dimmer, and he seemed to be walking in a dark empty space. Alone, without direction, without any light. Was that his future? A strong feeling of loneliness rose. His mind became puzzled and blank. Yet when his gaze landed on the sword that the figure held, all of the emptiness, loneliness, and bewilderment immediately disappeared. His body filled with power. The figure moving forward in the darkness used his sword to strike apart the darkness and void, used his sword to cut out a path. The darkness and empty space retreated like the tide. Friendly and warm figures appeared around him. Wei Xing seemed to wake up. A warm smile unconsciously rose on his mouth. The mental assault of the blood sword seemed to instantly become much weaker. No matter how it struggled, Wei Xing's sword heart was like an unmoving rock. Just like that figure in the dream state, Wei Xing raised the blood sword in his hand and moved it downwards. A red sword energy flashed. Vast sword essence charged. Boom! The sky seemed to shake. The water in front of Wei Xing immediately disappeared, and a ruler-straight passage that was dozens of li long appeared. In the 5 zhang-wide chasm, there wasn't a drop of water. The black rock at the bottom of the ocean was exposed to the air. The walls of water on the two sides of the passageway were 500 zhang tall and as smooth as glass. The chasm stretched into the distance. The octopus was fully exposed. There was a straight red blood line through the middle of its body. Pia! The enormous body of the octopus fell from the air to the bottom of the chasm in two pieces. Poof! The blood that should have gushed and sprayed instead exploded into a mist. Wei Sheng's blood sword shook. The blood mist was drawn into the blood sword and turned into a pillar of blood as it was absorbed. There wasn't a drop of blood left in the octopus. At this time, the walls of water started to crumble. The ruckus was like tens of thousands of horses galloping at once. Everyone, including Zue Mo, was stunned by Wei Sheng's strike. Eldest Shi Xiang, really, was too much of a freak. Suddenly, Zue Mo shook, the octopus. Little Mo Guess eyes were immediately taken over by countless Jingshi. He appeared like lightning next to the octopus corpse. Without a second word, each of his hands pulled on one half of the octopus. Golden scripts appeared on his body, his Shen power rippling, his eyes wide, his muscles tensing. He breathed and shouted, rise. Under the motivation of Jingshi, the power that Zue Mo displayed far surpassed his power when he had been fighting Xiao Rujian. Zue Mo seemed to be possessed by a god, an ancient monster. His tendons bulged, he panted as he pulled the two enormous pieces and slowly rose. He finally pulled them up onto the transportation ship before the water passageway collapsed. Wei Sheng, who had just finished his strike, saw this, and the devoutness and concentration on his face disappeared. His mouth was open wide, the muscles in his face frozen. He looked dazedly at Zue Mo's superhuman action. The blood sword in his hand couldn't help but tremble. Everyone was stunned. In this moment, the entire place was silent. There was only the sound of Zue Mo panting like the bellows of a furnace. He collapsed and leaned against the two mountains of meat, completely out of energy, with a dumb smile on his face. Did you find their origins? The sect leader of Thunder Sound Temple said. We are not sure. The disciple responsible sweated. Looking at the unhappy expression of the sect leader, the disciple hurriedly added, from the present clues, it is very likely they come from Mo Cloud C. Mo Cloud C. The sect leader's expression turned grave. But it is not easy to determine their true identity. They did not fight, and we could not prove that Lao De Guang was on their ships. We searched through their fleet and did not find him. But then when we closed the transportation formation, they flew into the Black Sea flying route. They are highly suspicious. The sect leader remained silent. A long time later, the sect leader spoke, this matter will end here. The disciple responsible stilled, and then had a surprised expression. The sect leader seemed to not see it and said, you may leave. The disciple shook and reacted, bowing hurriedly. This disciple bids farewell. After the disciple left the hall, a youth with an impressive presence walked out from behind the drapes. If the disciple that had been here before saw this, they would have been greatly surprised. Yang Yuan Hao. The best battle general of the 9 great Diana sects, Yang Yuan Hao. No one knew that Yang Yuan Hao had sneaked back to the sect without anyone's knowledge. Sect leader, are you worried about Mo Cloud C? Yang Yuan Hao also had some surprise on his face and asked. The sect leader's gaze was deep. Seeing Yang Yuan Hao, he had a small smile. Yuan Hao, you do not understand? Yang Yuan Hao shook his head. Mo Cloud C will be our ally for a long time. However, we have not discovered if they are from Mo Cloud C or not. They could go through the Black Sea flight route. The sect leader huffed a laugh. They aren't just Mo Cloud C, they are most likely Wei Sheng's group. Yang Yuan Hao thought of another problem. He frowned. Mo Cloud C knows our situation very well. How long has it been since the ruins appeared? They have already learned the news. For any battle general, it was a taboo for one's enemies to know too much about one's situation. 1. The sect leader shook his head. It may not be the case. Do not forget the matter regarding Heartleaf Diana sect. Mo Cloud C are not timid people. Yang Yuan Hao nodded. Heartleaf Diana sect did a stupid thing. The sect leader said, what is the situation on the front lines? Kuan Luan has been very silent recently. It is slightly unusual. A hint of worry flashed through Yang Yuanhao's eyes. A hint of cold flashed through the sect leader's eyes. Silent? It probably was them in the shadows creating the storm right now. Some people are always short-sighted. When they see that there is nothing to be worried about at the moment, they will want to make a fuss. I summoned you back here because I wanted to ask your opinion. Yang Yuanhao had been thinking on the way back. The sects had been very active recently, which had affected the unity of the 9 Great Dhyana sect. A divided 9 Great Dhyana sects would not even hold against one enemy attack. He suddenly thought of Mo Cloud C that was just mentioned. His eyes lit up. Maybe we could borrow some powers. Chapter 777, Mountain of Meat. They had really profited this time. Looking at the 2 mountains of meat in front of him, Mo felt as though he was in dream. This gift from Kunlun really was too valuable. Ancient beasts like this were rare and irreplaceable. If the Kunlun disciples hadn't used the soul-luring fragrance, Mo guessed that even all of them working together would not have been able to defeat this terrifying large thing. It would be a problem if they would be even able to escape alive. He had really not expected this profit. Kunlun were really good people. Everyone moved around the 2 mountains of meat in curiosity. It was rare to see such a large ancient beast. They basically only existed in legends. Because they were worried about encountering other strong beasts on the Black Sea flight line, the fleet did not dare to move around randomly on the route, but quickly flew towards their destination according to the steward's instructions. Only Mo could butcher the monster. He was the only one here skilled in forging. Only he knew what was useful or not. If the conditions allowed for it, Mo wanted to put the 2 mountains of meat into his ring and then take it back to Mo Cloud C. That would allow it to express its greatest value. However, even though Mo's ring was top tier, it could not hold 2 such enormous mountains of meat. Mo worked hard for 3 days. The one responsible for guiding his hand was Wei. While it had been many years since he had last dismembered an ancient beast, he was the only one that was familiar. This octopus was treasure, profit, great profit. Mo hummed a tune, his movements happy and rapid. The octopus was made up of treasure. Mo carefully gathered its slime. This was a rare treasure that could absorb enemy Shen attacks. What was greatest about it was that it could absorb Shen power attacks up to a certain degree. Mo tested it and it was so. Only when the Shen power reached a certain level of purity and the Shen technique reached a certain level of skill would the effect be overcome. In reality, it was the first time Mo had heard of a material with this property. Just this one trait determined its value. In the entire process, Mo was on high alert and fearful that he would miss a drop. He decided when he would forge his new Shen raiment, he would brush on this astounding Shen liquid, one coat after another, 100 times. Kunlun Shen power? Tian Huan Shen power? What of it? They wouldn't even create sparks when they hit his armor. The more he thought, the happier Mo felt. Kunlun was a good child, a good child. Mo started to hum again. Other than this, the octopus eyes were dried and turned into 2 black beads, 1. However, these 2 beads were a bit large, about the same height as Mo. He didn't know the use of the black beads, but he had tested it with Shen power. Mo found that when Shen power entered, it seemed to disappear. It could absorb Shen power. This was the only attribute that Mo had discovered up until now. The time did not allow for him to slowly examine it. He could only throw it into his ring. He had a feeling that this definitely was something good. The skin of the octopus was hard. Normal flying swords could only leave behind a faint mark. In the end, it had been Wei Xing with his god-killing blood sword that was able to cut it. Undoubtedly, the grade of this octopus skin was astounding. Mo guessed that it should be top level. For the great majority of Shen device raiments, high-level hide was essential. A Gui's undying ghost was a rarity in its composition. Most importantly, the surface area of this hide was almost unimaginable. Even if it was not able to be all used in Shen device raiments, if it was used to forge Shen equipment, they would be higher in grade than normal. Thinking about if he gave every one of the core members a pseudo-Shen device, and they were all outfitted, the offensive ability of Mo Cloud C would skyrocket. The teeth and bones of the octopus were all of extraordinary quality and could be used to forge Shin equipment. What made Zhuo Mo feel was unique was the dense suckers on the tentacles. The largest of these suckers were the size of a person, the smallest just the size of a thumb. There were 1,200,000 of them. Zhuo Mo was very interested in the suckers. They had a unique effect. Once they came into contact with something, they would instinctively absorb the power and life force of the target. It was very devious and terrifying. The bigger the sucker, the stronger its absorption ability. Zhuo Mo knew that the suckers only had a lingering effect because the octopus was dead. If the octopus was alive, this ability would be much stronger. He thought about the many suckers. Everywhere they passed, all life was stolen, all of the blood, flesh, and energy was sucked into the octopus. This octopus had lived for tens of thousands of years. He didn't know how many lives it had consumed. So terrifying. Zhuo Mo rejoiced. If there wasn't Kunlun's soul-luring fragrance, the possibility that the fleet would have survived would have been low. There was a kind of pattern that Zhuo Mo had never seen before on the suckers. Zhuo Mo suspected that it was this pattern that allowed the suckers to have such an unique ability. Zhuo Mo decided to spend some time to study it. He put all the suckers away in the ring. They piled together into a little mountain. Zhuo Mo knew that this was something good, but he didn't have a complete idea on how to use it. Everything that was useful was harvested and put away. But there was still a mountain of meat left in front of them. This was truly a mountain of meat, all of it was left behind after cutting up the octopus. The blood of the octopus seemed to have been completely sucked dry by Wei Sheng's god-killing blood sword. There wasn't even a drop of blood left, all of it was clean meat. Piled up there, it did not reek of blood. What to do with the meat? Zhuo Mo felt stuck. There was just too much. Eat it, Wei suggested. In the ancient era, if such a monster was killed, the entire tribe would divide it up and eat it. Each piece of flesh of such a monster that has lived for tens of thousands of years has been refined for countless years by Shin power. They contain astounding power and will be of great help to you if you use it. Really? Zhuo Mo had a suspicious expression. Want you know after eating? Wei was discontent. Zhuo Mo tried to use fire to roast a piece of meat. When he took a bite, his eyes widened. He felt an extremely faint thread of Shin power spread into his body. Good thing. He pointed at the mountain and said through a full mouth, "Eat, eat, eat." The other people saw this and started to act. They used different methods, but when the meat entered their mouth, they all became alert. Shin power. The meat actually contained Shin power and they could absorb a portion of the Shin power. This discovery caused everyone to turn crazy. Right now, other than Zhuo Mo, Wei Sheng, and Ague, who were special exceptions, the other people only had one path to increase Shin power, cultivation. This was the first time they encountered another way to increase Shin power. The meat mountain in front of them caused everyone to have a feeling they were smashed by happiness. Without needing Zhuo Mo to call them over, everyone started to eat furiously. Yet they found quickly that while they ate at as fast as possible, it was nothing compared to the 300 zhang mountain of meat in front of them. They could not eat all of it. The greatest tragedy in life was when you find that eating meat could increase Shin power, and there was a lot of meat like this in front of you, but you could not finish it. Most of the people with Zhuo Mo had grassroots origins, of impoverished backgrounds. They had endured many great hardships and hated wasting anything. How could they allow such a tragedy to occur? The group cursed the world. All of them had the same thought. No matter what, before they reached Lotus Sutra Temple, they had to finish consuming this meat mountain. Therefore, they started to think of solutions. In order to increase their appetite, they started to expend their Shin power, fighting, furiously cultivating, practicing. They invented all kinds of methods. If other people saw this, they would feel as though people's intelligence was limitless. For example, Wei Xing quickly created a highly efficient method. He used the god-killing blood sword to absorb the Shin power inside the meat, and then pass it into his body. The speed of absorption was high. However, the god-killing blood sword was only interested in blood, and not at all in the meat. This caused Wei Sheng to have to search for beasts to feed it blood and coerce its cooperation. Zhong Ru's method seemed much gentler. He summoned all kinds of Buddhas to absorb Shen power and then merged it in his body. Zhuo Mo was undoubtedly the brightest superstar of eating meat. All the little ones around him had extraordinary appetites, and there was still the glutton black gold seal soldier. Zhuo Mo was inspired by the suckers and his rate increased greatly. When the meat entered his stomach, the energies and Shen power would spread in threads into his body. Yet even so, when they flew out of the Black Sea flight route, they just barely managed to consume this enormous mountain of meat. All of them felt as though they had finished a difficult mission. Even composed people like Wei Sheng and Zhong Ru smiled. More of them felt lingering trepidation. In a very long time after, when any person mentioned the words, eat meat, they would be attacked unanimously by everyone around them. It was like a war. Even a glutton like the black gold seal soldier felt fear at hearing eating meat. Yet everyone's strength had increased enormously. The Shen power contained in an octopus that had lived for tens of thousands of years was enormous and terrifying. While they could not absorb all of it, and it was divided among so many people, for these people that had just started cultivating Shen power, this increase was still astounding. Nothing excited people more than strength. They were full of anticipation about the upcoming trip to the ruins. Even though they knew that they would likely face experts from Kunlun and Tianhuan, they did not feel any fear. As expected, they would have meat if they followed boss. They looked at Zhuo Mo with admiration. Some of the more honest people looked around as they traveled, muttering, another one, another one. As the fleet came closer to the ruins, they could clearly feel the number of Xiozha increasing in the surroundings, including experts. Yet what no one knew was that Zhuo Mo, who was hiding in the ship, had made a new discovery. One, previously stated as a one-eyed octopus. Chapter 778, Bihan. Ma Fan's battle was beautiful, Shi Dong said with admiration. Winning a difficult battle was a great aspiration for any battle general. Also, this victory raised Ma Fan's fame and placed him in the ranks of the first-class battle generals. There was competition among the battalions of Mo Cloud Sea as well. Shi Dong and Yi Ling's Gray Camp was not the top-ranked among the many battalions. Shi Dong was exceptional, but in Mo Cloud Sea, which was full of talented people, he was not the strongest. There was a handful of people with comparable strength. However, he did not feel any jealousy towards Ma Fan. Ma Fan deserved this. They had fought many times before, so many times it was innumerable. He knew Ma Fan's strength well. If Ma Fan was given a defense line, his strength would double. This was Lil Miss Darren's words, without any exaggeration. Ma Fan's achievements in other areas could only be said to be average, but once he gained control of a formation defense line, his win rate would become terrifying. No one liked to fight a defensive battle against Ma Fan. However, Shi Dong was full of confidence in himself. Ma Fan had a field he was skilled in, and he had his own specialization. Bihan Darren's order is really strange. Yi Ling saw Bihan's orders and couldn't resist commenting. Shi Dong looked into the distance and said softly, I think I have guessed Bihan Darren's general goal. He tried to make himself look calm as normal, but the anxiousness in his eyes exposed his true thoughts. Bihan Darren was too daring. Was this the confidence of a top battle general? What kind of confidence was this? You have guessed Darren's thoughts? Yi Ling was slightly shocked. However, he was not surprised. He knew that his strategic vision was lacking compared to Shi Dong. Shi Dong shook his head. Not just me, everyone else should understand by now. Why is that even this conversation like a riddle? Yi Ling said helplessly. Look at our position, then Tang Fei and a Zhagu. Shi Dong's hand moved above the gem app, and an invisible line caused Yi Ling's eyes to light up. He was still slightly puzzled. I cannot see anything. Shi Dong did not waste words and continued. Yes, Tongzi Battalion, a Zhagu Battalion, appear as though we have no connection to Bright Mountain Jie, but look here. On the Jie map, he found where Gray Camp was, and with it as the center, drew out a circle. Then he found the two other battalions and drew out circles around them. Now look, Sherdong said calmly, while we are not directly connected to Bright Mountain Jie, but the area that we are active in, and the position that we guard are like 3 signal flares. They will attract the battalions around us, and we have blockaded the path of the enemy attempting to reinforce Bright Mountain Jie. I seem to understand after you say this. Yi Ling's expression was puzzled. However, what is the use to stopping the reinforcements? Bright Mountain Jie still has Hai Jinyu and Shang Yusheng. Ma Fan defeated the 2 MO generals, but he definitely took great losses and will not have forces to and help Bihan Darren. You should also know of Hai Jinyun and Shang Yusheng. They are rare talents that have risen recently. Bihan Darren alone. You mean that? Yi Ling's eyes widened. He looked in disbelief at Sherdong as though he saw a ghost. We were wrong about Bihan Darren's intentions from the start. Sherdong tried to make his voice calm, but it was still filled with emotion. From the start, he decided to fight 1-on-2. We all were wrong. Then he said self-mockingly, this probably is the difference between us and top battle generals. We have to bow to his self-confidence. Yi Ling's eyes were wide, and he was unable to speak for a moment. This. He stammered for a while but could not continue. Sherdong shook his head, the shock in his eyes gradually disappearing. He recovered his usual calmness and composure. Since Bihan Darren dares to plan this, he must have some assurances. We will first carry out our own mission well. We cannot drag down Bihan Darren. A moment later, Yi Ling finally inhaled out a long breath. This is mad. Too mad. It was rare for Sherdong to see Yi Ling lose his composure. He couldn't help but flash a grin before he resumed his usual coolness. Don't worry for Bihan Darren. Let's first think of a way to finish our mission. Ma Fan gave a beautiful performance. If we do not finish our mission, we will be laughed at when we return. Yi Ling heard this and nodded seriously. All hail the king. We will do all we can in service for our king. We cannot be laughed at. Lei Peng and Yen Lu have the worst mouths. How do you think we should fight? I have an idea. Sherdong's eyes flashed with a cold light. Bihan Darren's idea is too dangerous. Tang Fei frowned. When Bihan's new orders were delivered to her hands, Bihan's intentions finally became clear. She had to admit that Bihan Darren's goal was completely unexpected. Miao Jun also jumped in fright at Bihan's intention. So mad. 1 against 2. I don't know what to say. He doesn't need to risk this at all. We are strong. While we are low in numbers, we are all elite battalions. There will not be much of a problem to take down 100 Energy Jia, unless Darren has bigger ambitions. Tang Fei continued. She said in an uncertain tone, what will be even bigger? Miao Jun frowned and thought hard. He was thinking of what reason would cause Bihan to use such a dangerous plan. Suddenly, the two of them raised their heads and looked at each other at the same time, seeing the disbelief in the other's eyes. Bihan. Too dangerous. Ajagu looked at the order on his hand and murmured to himself. Bihan Darren's intentions had completely been made apparent. There was nothing hard to guess. However, Ajagu found it hard to understand why Bihan would plan such a risky battle plan. Ajagu did not know Bihan's strength well, but he knew that Bihan Darren was much stronger than him. He was also a gold battle general, but he was nothing compared to a top battle general. Bihan Darren's idea? Suddenly, his eyes lit up. A daring idea that was also impossible flashed through his mind. Was it? His target is us, Shang Yusheng said slowly. His speaking speed was slow, almost pausing between each word. Hai Jinyun did not have any impatience. He smiled coldly. He really is ambitious. As expected of a top battle general, look, his boldness is something that we cannot match. His goal is not Bright Mountain Jie. It was us, from the beginning, Shang Yusheng said. She cannot be mobilized. The only ones that the alliance can move to match him are the two of us. He's too proud. If he used the time difference and attack us separately, he might have a chance. But we have met up. He wants to use his 1 battalion against us. He's too naive. Hai Jinyun's voice was full of scorn. The two of them were new talents of the alliance. Among the new generation, they were strong and major figures. The two of them were thought of genius youths that would possibly become top battle generals. No one doubted this. People believed that if they had a few more years, the duo would definitely become top battle generals. Right now, they were not top-ranked battle generals, but the difference was minuscule. One of them alone might not be able to beat Bihan, but the two of them together, they had the advantage of numbers and they worked well together. They could only be stronger than Bihan. Hai Jin-yun's scorn was not just due to arrogance. Shang Yusheng's expression was still serious. He said in his uniquely slow manner, "If this is not the case, will we fight him?" Hai Jin-yun stilled. He thought and then he shook his head. "No, if I encounter him alone, I will definitely avoid him, wait to meet up with you, before searching him out for a fight." "Maybe this is what he wants," Shang Yusheng said. Hai Jin-yun was not stupid and reacted quickly. He said suspiciously, "You mean that he definitely has created a situation to make us feel as though we have the upper hand? Isn't that the case?" Shang Yusheng asked in return. Hai Jin-yun was silent. Bihan had been the one that had arranged the present situation. If Bihan had deliberately done this, there was only one possibility. Bihan had absolute confidence in himself. This is not possible. Hai Jin-yun couldn't help but say, "I will admit that Bihan is strong, but I don't believe that he can fight against the two of us in an open battle. Not even Xue Dong can. Do you feel that the two of us cannot win against him?" "I also do not believe it." Shang Yusheng shook his head. "But I believe that Bihan definitely has powerful moves that we do not know of." Hai Jin-yun nodded. "You are right, we need to be careful of his schemes." His expression became grave. "But I believe even more that strength is the most important in open battle. We need to keep an eye on the soldiers. Maybe spies have made their way into the battalions?" "And you are right, use inactivity to deal with all changes. Keep an eye on the ranks, we will not panic, and there will not be any problems." Shang Yusheng also threw away his worries. The two of them were among the strongest battle generals of the Mo Martial Alliance. Even though there were some areas of Bihan's plan that they did not understand, they would not become timid because of the other's feints. What any famed battle general believed in was himself and the battalion behind him. Shang Yusheng laughed, fighting spirit in his expression and his tone excited as he said, "Yes, as long as we do not panic, he will not have a chance." "Who's afraid of who? A top battle general is nothing, that's just because we have not shown our might. I want to see just how much water there is in this top battle general." Suddenly, a wave of urgent alarm sounded. The two exchanged a look, their expressions serious. Bihan had come. Chapter 779, Song Ling Xue in the darkness of the night. Song Ling Xue was silent and motionless like a puppet. Her pretty face showed faint sorrow. She threw herself into the darkness, she lost her usual aura of authority and restraint. She sat there like a normal 17-year-old girl and stared at the distant mountains. The string of lantern lights were like the stars in the sky. She thought of the past years, their troubles, and how sparse the lights had been then. The present Song family was much more prosperous than before. She did not feel much pride, only exhaustion. At this time, she had shed her determination. She was like a helpless kitten curled in the corner. "Darren." The hoarse voice of a male sounded in the darkness. She did not raise her head. She was too familiar with this voice, so familiar that she did not need to pretend in front of him. She gave a light sound of acknowledgement. "Yesterday, someone visited Second Elder, and Second Elder saw them off at the gates," the male said in a low voice. His usually calm voice was filled with indescribable fury. Third Elder's son was accepted into the first Yao art house. Song Ling Xue's lips moved. She said indifferently, "Isn't that what he hoped for?" His prodigal son has always been a sickness on his mind. Chief Elder most likely cannot withstand the pressure for long, the male said in a low voice. "I heard Chief Elder's steward say that they received a threat from an unknown person yesterday. The target is Chief Elder's granddaughter. Chief Elder may likely remain quiet on this matter." "All of them betray me, huh?" Song Ling Xue laughed. At this time, her cold laugh showed age that did not match her real age. The male was silent for a moment before he suddenly spoke. Darren, flee. Flee? Flee where? Song Ling Shui was bewildered. What about the Tsang family? What about the Merchant Association? How can we care about that now? The male's tone became panicked. If Darren does not flee, it is likely. What's there to be afraid of? Song Ling Shui smiled desolately. Do not worry, I am worth more to them alive than dead. No matter if it is to take over the business association and the Tsang family or to become a tool to earn them money, they all need me alive. The male was silent. Song Ling Shui murmured to herself, the elders are too timid. If they could harden their resolves, the business association would be able to bargain with these people. Darren, what if we throw away the business association? The male suddenly asked. Throw away the association? Song Ling Shui stilled. Then her brow furrowed and she sat up. Who told you this? Yesterday night when I was spying on Second Elder, I was caught by someone when returning, the male said calmly. Ah. Song Ling Shui was astounded, the sternness and authority on her face disappearing. She asked urgently, were you wounded? The male's heart warmed. He shook his head and said, no, the other only asked me to tell you this message. Song Ling Shui's expression eased slightly but her heart trembled. Uncle Yan's strength was unfathomable in her eyes. No matter how difficult the mission was, Uncle Yan would finish it perfectly. Uncle Yan was the last support that her father had left her. If it wasn't for Uncle Yan, she would not have taken charge of the Tsang family so quickly. While Uncle Yan had never said how powerful he was, she could hear from between his words that Uncle Yan had been a powerful expert in the past. What is their background? Song Ling Shui asked curiously. Her mind moved quickly. She did not fear the addition of a new power. In truth, any change for her in this hopeless situation was good news. Because the situation would not be any worse than now. I could not see. Uncle Yan's tone was low, and filled with a rare wariness. The other is familiar with the underground world. I encountered at least 3 people that match me in strength. Those in the underground world that have such strength will not be unknown, yet I cannot identify these people's origins. Song Ling Shui became alert. She was intelligent and Uncle Yan's words contained a great amount of information. The other was strong, and with so many experts, it would not be a minor faction. The other wanted her to give up on the business association, they clearly wanted her ability at management. Giving up on the association but not the Tsang family showed that the other had confidence they could guarantee the safety of the Tsang family. This astounded her. If this message had not been carried to her by her most trusted Uncle Yan, she definitely would not believe it. Uncle Yan had watched her grow up and the two of them were like father and daughter. He definitely would not betray her. Who was the other? She knew the reason that she felt hopeless at the families pressuring her because they had the support of the Council of Elders. They were not people that she, the Tsang family or the business association could fight. This mysterious faction was so confident. She felt it hard to believe. Are there any underground factions so strong? She murmured to herself. Oh. Unexpectedly, Uncle Yan answered. His tone was filled with certainty. The underground world is not large, and not as mysterious as the rumors say. The relatively major underground powers are closely connected to the Council of Elders. Then where do they find the confidence to make this offer? Song Ling Shui was puzzled. Uncle Yan hesitated for a while before saying, they may not be an underground power. Song Ling Shui stilled. How so? Uncle Yan explained, in truth, underground factions are fangs and teeth. Some major factions use them for convenience in spying and dealing with matters hard to openly resolve. If someone does it in the shadows, it is much easier to handle some matters. Most of the Yao underground powers have great backgrounds and support. Sometimes, they are responsible for establishing contact. If I am right, and this develops, the faction behind them will be revealed. No wonder the underground factions can do as they wish. Song Ling Shui finally realized and said, that is a misunderstanding. Actually, they are restrained in many aspects, Uncle Yan said. They cannot go too far in many matters. The higher-ups will turn a blind eye to some matters and not pursue them in order for them to survive. If the higher-ups order something, they have to complete it. The competition between the underground factions is cruel. The other wasn't an underground faction. Song Ling Shui became excited. Even though the situation was already like this, she still did not hope to fall to being on the side of an underground faction. The darkness was a road of no return, especially to a clan. Can Uncle Yen find out the origins of this underground factions? She asked in anticipation. If they could find the origins of these people, maybe they would find a clue to the people behind them. This was a deadlock. If someone disturbed it, maybe it would offer them a chance. Song Ling Shui's spirit rose again. Uncle Yen looked at Song Ling Shui, whose fighting spirit had come back, and nodded seriously. I will try. Zhuo Mo's finger constantly moved through the air like a pen. He would occasionally stop and think for a while. He had been in this crazed state for a few days. He constantly swiped and drew. Other people knew that he was considering a problem and did not disturb him. Zhuo Mo, who had ate meat until he almost went insane, originally prepared to refine the Shun power he had just absorbed. Yet when he was in the cabin and preparing to refine the power, that unique pattern from the green strand reappeared once again in his mind. This time he saw it more clearly. He discovered many places he had not seen clearly last time. He was overjoyed at these discoveries. Zhuo Mo was sure now that this pattern was a Shun glyph. For people now, Shun glyphs were not something far away. Tian Huan had been the first to study Shun glyphs, and they were the ones with the most understanding of Shun glyphs. Tian Huan's Shun power was based in Shun glyphs. As Shun power developed and more people cultivated Shun power, people's understanding of Shun glyphs increased. If one said that the core of Ling power was seal scripts, then the core of Shun power was Shun glyphs. Shun glyphs were not as mysterious as people imagined, but it was still the most profound and attractive mystery. Even Tian Huan, who had learned the most about Shun glyphs, had only mastered no more than 5 complete Shun glyphs up until now. So when Zhuo Mo realized what this pattern he could not understand was, he immediately became excited. Zhuo Mo knew a bit more than other people about Shun glyphs. In ancient tribes, each tribe would have their own Shun glyph. For example, the Sun glyph of the Sun tribe and the Green Vine glyph of the Green Vine tribe. These Shun glyphs weren't just related to their Shun power, they were also related to something else, ancient Shun devices. Ancient Shun devices were not the same as the present Shun device raiments. The forging of ancient Shun devices were done by the greatest members of each tribe, imprinting the Shun glyph into the device. The present Shun device raiments was something that Zhuo Mo had based more on forging methods before he had comprehended a complete Shun glyph. Almost all of the Shun device raiments followed Zhuo Mo's example. Zhuo Mo had mastery of 2 Shun glyphs. One was the Sun glyph, the other the Green Vine glyph. Of the two, he was more skilled on the Sun glyph and less skilled with the Green Vine glyph. However, even though he mastered the Sun glyph, there were still many places he did not understand. The difference between Shun glyphs and seal scripts was that every part of the Shun glyph had to be comprehended. If one could not comprehend it, they could not use it or draw it. A completely new Shun glyph immediately caused Zhuo Mo to become excited. While he could not comprehend it right now, the value in a new Shun glyph still excited Zhuo Mo. As these years passed, and people pursued Shun power by exploring ancient ruins, all kinds of Shun glyph fragments appeared. On the black market, a rubbing of a Shun glyph part was worth cities. Only those that comprehend Shun glyphs could make imprints, and it was a great burden to the imprinter to make an imprint. Due to this, the number of Shun glyph imprints on the market was very small. Zhuo Mo quickly was immersed in the comprehension of a new Shun glyph. He tried to draw it according to the image in his mind. Suddenly, his fingertip felt heavy and gave him a different feeling. Chapter 780, Confidence. The dense ranks of the battalion were like a silent black cloud that pressed forward with great pressure. It was the first time Hai Jin Yun and Shang Yusheng saw this famous battalion. They were silent. The battalion in front of them was like a group of lifeless killing machines. A deathly silence that was filled with indescribable murderousness. Top Battle General, just as the rumors say. Hai Jinyun couldn't help but praise. His heart trembled. Sin Battalion, this was the legendary Sin Battalion, one of Mo Cloud C's 2 strongest battalions. The most famous battalion left behind by the fallen titan Xian Kong Temple. Who would have thought that Xianxia, who had appeared on the world stage and astounded the world, would have died, yet Bihan, who had been guarded against, became one of the greatest and top battle generals of all of the Xiuzhou world. There were no signs of life to be seen from the organized ranks. The almost mechanical meticulousness was expressed in every detail. The ghost-like seal scripts on the faces of the Sin Battalion members, as well as the indifference on their faces, made people's hearts feel cold. The advance of the battalion was like ghosts traveling silently in the night. They could not see Bihan. Bihan was hiding within Sin Battalion. From the information they had, Bihan's fighting methods still followed Xian Kong Temple style. He was also a rare battle general that used Xiuzhou methods while being Mo Shang Yusheng also had a serious solemn expression. He felt unprecedented pressure from Bihan. But there seemed to be a fire burning in his heart. His voice was as slow as usual but filled with spirit. We defeat him, we will become top battle generals. Hai Jinyun laughed. His faint golden face also flashed with fighting spirit. Yes, we defeat him and we will become top battle generals. Bihan is too arrogant. In a frontal battle, power is everything. Kill him. He was filled with confidence in his battalion, and also in Shang Yusheng beside him. They would definitely win this battle. Bihan looked indifferently at the 2 battalions in front of him. The 2 battalions were well organized and it could be seen they were well trained. The Mo soldiers also gazed over at his side with spirit and no fear. Some even licked their lips with anticipation on their faces. Bihan was experienced in war. This kind of soldier were battle-hardened elites. The expense to recruit and train this kind of elite was astounding. Also, there was no fear or caution on the faces of these soldiers. This proved that they were filled with confidence towards their leader. Bihan's heart was not stirred at all. Everyone thought Bihan was mad and extreme, but no one knew was that under his madness was an icy cold resolve. That fire at Xian Kong Temple had swept away all of Bihan's savagery and hatred. He had buried that sect thousands of years old with his own hands, stolen its treasure. His last mental barrier had been overcome. Without his demons, Bihan was still mad, extreme, proud and hard to approach. He still attacked like a raging fire, still was stronger offensively than defensively, yet what no one knew was that he was silently changing. His changes were like Sin Battalion, forever silent. When one reached his level, they could only rely on themselves to advance. Without hatred, his excitement towards battle came from his own affection for it as well as some emotions he could not verbalize. He liked his present life, he liked Mo Cloud C. He did not want this to be disrupted by others. At first no one knew of his improvement. Only Zwe Mo and Gong Sun Cha detected something. Without hatred, Bihan, whose mind had been freed, threw himself into thinking and studying. He was more terrifying than a hateful Bihan. He was a recluse, an outsider. He did not like to converse with others. He was stoic and spoke few words. He was like his Sin Battalion, unable to merge with the world, but he was a genius. He was a genius that grew up under the suppression of Xian Kong Temple. While he was twisted, he was still a genius that was not any less than Xianxia, who had shone so brightly. The first to notice his change was Zwe Mo stared to help improve and change Bihan's Sin Battalion to strengthen them. The first strengthening at Great Peace City had improved Sin Battalion's fighting abilities. After that, Sin Battalion, this nightmarish name, finally became a Nightmare Battalion. The modifications this time were greater than last time. The present Zwe Mo was much stronger in all aspects compared to that time. Zwe Mo might not know as much as Gong Sun Cha and Bihan about tactics, but his sense and strategy was admirable. It was under his efforts that Sin Battalion became the first true Shen Power Battalion of Mo Cloud C. In Zwe Mo's view, the Shen Power era would become the era of Shen Power Battalions. Sin Battalion's Mo puppets that were like seal soldiers gave Zwe Mo enormous room to work. He was the creator of the first pseudo-Shen device. Zwe Mo's skill in this area might not be the best in the world, but he was among the best. The completely new Sin battalion excited Bihan. The second to notice Bihan's change was Lil Mississippi. As a top battle general himself, Lil Miss perceptively detected Bihan's transformation. In order to help Bihan go a step further, he quietly invited Bihan to temporarily take his duties as the principal of the battle general house. As expected by Gong Sun Cha, Bihan as the principal was crude in his methods. He practiced battle through battle, using real combat rather than lecturing. He beat the young battle generals of the battle general school until they spat blood. Yet in this kind of combat simulation, Bihan's new fighting method gradually formed, and details were perfected. Bihan was slightly strange in personality, but he was not one that did not know good and bad. He remembered Gong Sun Cha's care. The arsonist. He had never thought that he would possess a Shin device raiment so quickly. Even Zwe Mo, Wei Sheng, Zhong Ru, and Sung Lianer didn't have their own. The first and second Shin device raiments of Mo Cloud C were both battle general types. And one of them was his arsonist. When he learned that arsonist was his, Bihan, who was not skilled in using his speech to express his emotions, became even quieter. No one could say anything about Gong Sun Cha receiving City Destroyer. He was Zwemo's shitty, Zwemo's first and most loyal follower. Yet him, an outsider, he had been conned by Zwe Mo over to Mo Cloud C when he didn't have anywhere else to go. In terms of closeness, he definitely ranked very low. He had been restrained in Xian Kong Temple, suppressed, disowned by his father and brother, and then exiled. Bihan had tasted all the warmth and coldness life had to offer. The arsonist was the first time he felt that if he was to die for Darren, to die for Mo Cloud C, it would be worth it. So when Zwe Mo gave him the important duty of taking down 100 Energy Jia, he set down this seemingly mad target. The 9 Great Diana sects could not be attacked. It was not the time to attack the Yao. The most likely route of expansion was the Mo Martial Alliance. It was not hard to conquer 100 Energy Jia, but after doing so, the Mo Martial Alliance would be extremely wary of Mo Cloud C and would be prepared to resist when further expansion occurred later. Bihan's true goal was, at the same time as conquering 100 Energy Jia, he would try to decrease Mo Martial Alliance's strength as much as possible. The mad plan had formed like that. Right now, it was the most crucial battle. If he won this battle, killed Hai Jin Yun and Shang Yuxing, the Mo Martial Alliance's strength would be greatly hampered. The weakened Mo Martial Alliance would cause the factions around it to stir. This was even more beneficial for Mo Cloud C. No matter what, he had to win this battle. He touched the Shin device raiment he wore, arsonist. A cold feeling came from his fingertip. Bihan's eyes were icy and murderousness. Sin battalion advanced. The bright Mountain Jia battle that was being watched by the world entered its climax. That person is investigating our origins. Chai Shanqing laughed softly. The other, that Song family's Uncle Yen, had clearly left the world of darkness for a long time, and many of his moves were now rusty and unpracticed. Usually, this would not attract attention, but for people like Chai Shanqing, experts that lived all this time in the world of the darkness, this bit of shortcoming immediately attracted their attention. Oh, it seems that Song Ling Shui still hasn't given up. Yu Qinlai had a cruel smile. While he said that these were missions for Nan Yu and the others, he still followed and aided them. He felt exasperated. He wondered why the higher-ups had sent a bunch of greenhorns on such a mission of high difficulty. While Nan Yu and the others were strong, they were clearly not experienced enough and beginners in all areas. After thinking about the importance of a bird-level mission, Yu Qinlai followed them for good measure. Yu Qinlai knew that the value of all of Blackfire could not compare to this mission. For the higher-ups, supporting an underground faction like Blackfire was nothing. The reason that he had been chosen most likely was related to his family. The Yu Qin family. The first time they met, that person had mentioned this family name that had almost faded in his memory and would occasionally cause a ripple in his heart. That person had given him great care in these past years. But after living for these years in the underground, he knew that the so-called friendships of the ancestors was never more useful than at present. Nan Yu and the others sighed in relief at the presence of Yu Qinlai. They knew themselves. They could manage to do things like kill people and set fires, but in terms of scheming, they were incompetent. Yu Qinlai immediately became the core of this mission. As he took command, all of Black Fire started to turn around him. The core members of Black Fire all knew that the support behind Boss was very strong, and the faithfulness of the entire group increased greatly. Most of the people that lived in the underground world always had reasons that they had to do so. There were rarely people that choose to live the darkness. Most were forced into this life due to various circumstances. Darkness meant falling and light meant a future. They had families. They hoped to have a bright future. This was a trait of all people. They bet on this opportunity. Why don't we give them a warning? Tao Wei smiled, sharpness flashing through her eyes. A cruel smile rose on Yu Qinlai's lips that did not match his age. Go, let her understand that she is just a lamb. Lambs do not qualify to negotiate with wolves. Chapter 781, Opportunity. Xiao Rujian, Hezi, and Hai are dead, killed by others. Tan Zu's voice was indifferent, as though he was speaking about a matter not related to him at all. What happened? They seemed to have been planning something. Did something happen? Nie Chen frowned. They had been scheming about an ancient octopus on the Black Sea flight route. The female Xiao who spoke had a beautiful appearance, but her expression was frosty. She was the famous ice queen of Kunlun, Zhen Mengling. Many of Kunlun's male disciples were in love with her. She wasn't just an outstanding beauty, she was exceptionally talented and hard-working on her cultivation. Her progress was so rapid it caused countless males to feel ashamed, and no one dared to confess to her. Tan Zu's brow didn't even flicker. He said coolly, "They died on the hands of others? They did not have enough skill. Die if they want to, but do not shame Kunlun." Nie Cheng frowned slightly. He was displeased with Tan Zu's attitude, but he also knew Tan Zu's personality. Tan Su was reclusive and strange, not welcomed among the disciples. Nie Cheng was the opposite. His appearance could not be said to be handsome, yet he had a lively presence. While he was strong, he was friendly towards the other disciples and deeply popular with them. Also, he was on good terms with Lin Qian. As Lin Qian was in charge of Kunlun at present, his status had risen as well. He said, "Ru Jianshidi is not bad in strength and has a cautious personality. If he acts, he most likely has properly prepared. Hezi and Hai are average in strength, but they are definitely experts in the outside world. He Shimi also has the circular fiend sword formation from Su Shishu. And Hai has Wu Shishu's 100 soul-destroying sword pill. Unless the enemy is too strong, how can they die at the hands of others?" He saw that Jinling Ming and Tan Su were not interested in this matter and did not bring it up again. Their mission this time was difficult, and everyone was under great pressure. They had to obtain the Shin device nucleus of the ancient ruins. Kunlun had many eyes and ears everywhere. When the ruins were just discovered, Kunlun received the news. After that, Kunlun started to use its power to divine and search for clues. When other people were still uncertain about what was inside the ruins, Kunlun had already divined that there was a Shun device nucleus there. All kinds of high-level forces continued to infiltrate the 9 Great Diana sect territories. Their intelligence network was also activated, and they schemed to obtain a token. Nie Chen and the other 2 were some of the most accomplished disciples of the newest generation of Kunlun. They had not been talented before, but after cultivating Shin power, they had risen up and became stronger by the day. In the last few years, as they cultivated the new Shin power, under the full support of the older generation, Kunlun had a wave of disciples that were outstandingly talented and had strong Shin power. This batch of disciples were all talented. In order to create a wave of experts, Kunlun had invested greatly in them. They were also hardworking and determined, not failing to live up to Kunlun's hopes, and grew up quickly. This group of disciples had a name inside of Kunlun. They were called the children of Kunlun. Each child of Kunlun had unique power within Kunlun. They had the best support, the best treatment, they were directly under Kunlun's command. Every child of Kunlun had unfathomable power. Outstanding power and great resources combined with Kunlun's determined and persistent attitude had created this new wave of powerful disciples. Child of Kunlun was synonymous with strength. They were the top fighting force in all of Kunlun. They were unquestionably loyal to Kunlun. They had self-control and worked hard. They were emotionless and cold. They appeared at the most dangerous missions. They were the idols that all Kunlun disciples revered. Ever since the children of Kunlun were founded, this mission was the first time 3 children of Kunlun were sent out together. From this, Kunlun's desire for the Shin device nucleus could be seen. "I'm going to cultivate," Tan Su threw down before leaving. Zhen Ling Meng also left without a word. Nie Chen was left alone to grimace helplessly to himself. Lotus Sutra Temple is up ahead. The steward had an expression of joy. It really was a blessing from the heavens that they had safely survived the Black Sea flight route. The Lotus Sutra Temple honored the lotus flower, and all kinds of lotus flowers could be seen all along the route. They were exquisite and elegant. However, other than Zhong Ru, who would admire them, the other people didn't even look at them. Everyone looked warily at the surroundings. They had already detected several groups of dangerous presences. They were brushing shoulders with powerful enemies. To make them feel danger like this meant they were strong. At the beginning of any new era, there were always many geniuses. Mo Cloud C improved by the day, and the others were not willing to fall behind. Even Wei Sheng felt slightly wary of the power of the people just now. It seemed that the temptation of the Shin device nucleus surpassed his imagination. Zuemo stood at the front of the ship as his heart trembled. His eyes were experienced. Just now, he even saw Emwen Yao. This surprised him. However, when he thought about it, he understood. The Shen device raiment was a great weapon of strategic value to any power. If there was even the slightest chance, no one would be willing to give it up. Suddenly, a Diana Xiao dressed in white robes with lotus flowers on the sleeve flew towards them. The entire fleet went on guard. The others seemed to not see their wary gazes and bowed. Then he said, "Guest from Mo Cloud C, my master invites you." Zuomo's eyelid flickered. The other knew their origins. He did not admit or refute it. He examined the other for a while before speaking. "You are from Lotus Sutra Temple?" The other smiled. "This one is the White Lotus Reverend of Lotus Sutra Temple." The steward's expression changed. Lao Guang's face turned ashen. He carefully made his way beside Zuemo and said in a low voice, "There are 4 reverends in Lotus Sutra Temple: blue, red, white, black. The 4 Lotus reverends have a high position in the sect just below the sect leader." The master of the White Lotus Reverend? Then that referred to the sect leader of Lotus Sutra Temple. Zuemo immediately realized that his journey had been exposed. He did not try to hide it and said with a smile, "Please lead the way." Under the guidance of the White Lotus Reverend, they came to a nondescript place. As expected, it was the sect leader of Lotus Sutra Temple. The 9 Great Diana sect had always been targets that Mo Cloud C paid attention to. Zuemo could recognize the sect leaders of all of the 9 Great Diana sects. When Zuemo's gaze landed on a young person next to the sect leader of Lotus Sutra Temple, his gaze suddenly focused. Yang Yuan Hao. The best battle general of the 9 Great Diana sects, Yang Yuan Hao. What was he doing here? Zuemo's expression was calm, but his mind was a storm. He suddenly realized the meeting this time was probably an opportunity. Boom boom boom. Ear-splitting explosions occurred constantly. The lights flashed across the sky like rain and illuminated Bihan's cold and emotionless features. The battalions from both sides were tangled into a ball, truly mixed together. Bihan abandoning technique to charge had been unexpected to Hai Jin Yun and Shang Yusheng. They hadn't thought that Bihan would dare to make a full frontal assault when he did not have the advantage of numbers. But the two were not ordinary people and quickly responded. A charge against a charge. Hai Jin Yun's battalion was like a roaring lion that welcomed Sin battalion that came at them and collided head-on. Shang Yusheng's battalion maintained their distance from Hai Jin Yun. He was like a dagger hidden in the shadows waiting for a chance to land a fatal blow. The two flows smashed together, creating dazzling sparks. Kill. Hai Jin Yun charged at the very front, his faint golden face twisted and ferocious. He gave off golden light like a sun that could not be directly looked at. He was the most eye-catching existence on the battlefield. He felt no fear. He held the large black blade in front of him horizontally. The Mo steed under him roared, and he was like a god of war. Elite guards kept close to him in order to prevent Hai Jin Yun from being trapped. Hai Jin Yun remained fixed. The Mo steed under him suddenly jumped forward, the large black blade in his hand suddenly lighting up with a blinding golden light as he cut down. A golden blade energy dozens of zhang wide came with a destructive and unstoppable presence forward. The golden energy flashed and reflected on the faces of the Sin Battalion soldiers, dimming and brightening. They still had cold expressions that did not change at all at the sight of this astounding blade energy. The gray-white eyes were lifeless, their cold faces expressionless. They seemed to come from another world. Just as the blade energy was about to hit their bodies, the Shin equipment of the Sin Battalion soldiers suddenly lit up with marks of light. These marks of light that were like seal scripts caused a thread of pain to appear on the expressionless faces of the Sin Battalion members. They seemed to be enduring a pain. Yet in reverse to the pain on their faces, their gray-white and lifeless eyes suddenly became as clear and bright as though they were eyes of a baby. They seemed to open their eyes for the first time to see the world. Facing the astounding blade energy, 50 Sin Battalion soldiers moved at once. Countless energies flew out from their hands. In this moment, the rays of light formed a net in the air. ZZT ZZT ZZT. Every energy that hit the blade energy would give off a soul-shaking explosion. The explosions continued at a rapid rate that caused people's scalps to go numb. The Sin Battalion soldiers were unaffected. Their movements were lightning fast and their attacks were constant. The lights were like a rainstorm that hit the blade energy. With every hit from the light energies, the blade energy would shake. In an instant, thousands of light energies hit the blade energy like thousands of spiderwebs entangling the blade energy. After being hit thousands of times, the astounding blade energy dozens of zhang long collapsed. As expected of Sin Battalion, just a few dozen members of Sin Battalion were able to block Hai Jin Yun's full-on attack. Elite. Before the era of Shin power had arrived, Hai Jin Yun had just been a normal Mo general. However, after cultivating Shin power, he had become a powerful battle general that surpassed Mo marshals. The blade energy being destroyed simulated Hai Jin Yun's fighting spirit. With an angry shout, the golden light on his body intensified. His presence suddenly exploded and increased. Hai Jin Yun was like a golden ball of fire that burned brightly, giving off so much light people were unable to look directly at him. Hearing the angry shout of their commander, the surrounding Mo soldiers also shouted in unison. Which of them were not proud? When had they ever had such a setback? The presence of the battalion rose, and the morale rose rather than be impacted. Boom! Thousands of Mo soldiers shouted at the same time, golden and angry flames erupting from their bodies. They were like thousands of fires that burned fiercely. The entire Mo battalion was like one being. They could communicate with each other, and their presence seemed to be one without any weakness. The golden light seemed to be alive. It gathered towards Hai Jin Yun at an astounding rate. The golden light on Hai Jin Yun increased by more than 10 times. He was like a blinding sun that people could not look at. An angry shout came from the ball of light and rang out over the entire battlefield. Hundreds of long golden blade energies exploded from within the sun. Each blade energy was several li long and came at Sin Battalion like a storm. Chapter 782, A Battle of Charges. The fighting method of the Mo was to gather all the power of the battalion onto the battle general and then have it activated by the battle generals. As a result, Mo fighting methods had strict requirements for battle generals. Other than combat sense and a grasp of the battlefield, one had to be strong as an individual. Otherwise, they would not be able to tolerate the concentrated power from the entire battalion. Hai Jin Yun had been an unknown before, but after cultivating Shin power, His strength had skyrocketed and he quickly became one of the 3 major battle generals for the Mo Martial Alliance. His combat method followed the style of Mo battle generals. His body, which had been refined with Shen power, allowed him to tolerate more power. Also, his own Shen power allowed him to easily manipulate the great power he gathered from the battalion. Boom! The power of the entire battalion gathered towards him as if attracted to a magnet, causing a release of blade energies. Each blade energy was several li long, like enormous sickles that cleaved through the entire battlefield. Howls and wails filled the battlefield. A normal battle general would probably fall apart facing such an astounding attack and be robbed of all of their spirit. Yet Hai Jinyun's enemy was Bihan, a top battle general that could enter the top 10 of the Xiuzhou world. It was not easy to shake him with such an attack. The members of Xin Battalion silently changed position. Some people disappeared into space and then appeared in another place in the same moment. In a blink, a battle formation formed. A spiraling Diana chant was unusually clear among the waves of wails and howls, reaching directly into the mind. Mo that were slightly weaker heard this, and the golden lights on their body trembled. Their minds almost went out of control. Xin Battalion originated from Xian Kong Temple. Even now, it was possible to see many traces of Xian Kong Temple's influence. Dark red light bloomed from beneath the feet of Xin Battalion. The red light flowed and flew up into the sky. Enormous dark red seals formed in the sky. Boom boom boom. The intimidating blade energies struck the red seals. Enormous explosions drowned every person on the battlefield. When the light dissipated, the red seals were mostly dim. There was only one red seal that had been destroyed. What had also disappeared at the same time were 10 Xin Battalion members. However, all the blade energies had disappeared from the sky. Bihan was expressionless. His face seemed to be carved from stone, and did not show any ripples from the intense fighting in front of him. However, defense was never Bihan's style. For Bihan, who was said to attack like fire, how could he only fight a defensive battle? Xin Battalion once again shifted and finished a transition from the Oi Ghost King Seal formation to the Skunda Demon Defeating formation, an offensive formation. The red energy coming off Xin Battalion grew even brighter. Their gray-white eyes were still unaffected and lifeless, which gave people a strange feeling of pressure. Countless threads of red light wrapped around the fighters of Xin Battalion. The Xin Battalion soldiers slowly floated into the sky. Under their feet, red sutra characters appeared. The sutra characters moved, and it felt as though the sounds of numerous people were chanting in synchrony. Thousands of sutra characters spun and a terrifying presence gathered above the formation. In the span of 3 short breaths, an enormous figure formed from nothingness. A vast mountainous figure floated above the combat formation. The Skunda was authoritative and a terrifying presence spread from him in waves. The Skunda's eyes were a faint gold and emotionless. His gaze covered all of Hai Jinyun's battalion. He reached out his enormous hand and slapped down on Hai Jinyun. Boom! Like waves crashing into the shore, like a furious tide receding. An astounding wave of air gusted in all directions. Good move! An angry shout spread through the sky. Hai Jinyun's excited voice was filled with spirit. Nothing would make him more excited than such a direct battle. The Skunda's mountainous body gave off a heavy feeling of pressure. All of Hai Jinyun battalion was covered in the shadow of this figure. Hai Jinyun did not feel any fear. He held the large black blade, and his eyes burned with fighting spirit. He suddenly jumped and shot towards the enormous hand coming down with a stroke of his blade. Blinding golden light glimmered from his blade. Countless golden lights immediately gathered on his great blade. The entire blade seemed to flow with golden liquid and gave off light. Shen technique, golden split chop. The Shen power inside his body was furiously channeled into the large blade in his hand. The furious power that came from the battalion quickly was tamed by his Shen power. A blade light that seemed able to tear apart the sky lit up. The Skunda's enormous hand immediately shattered into pieces. The Skunda roared angrily, and its other hand came down. Yet in front of this world-shocking blade of light, The Skunda's enormous hands seemed to be papier-mâché and easily crumbled. The blade light hit the Skunda's body with its remaining power. The Skunda suddenly froze and then disappeared into the sky. Hai Jin-yun's fighting spirit almost reached a peak. There was nothing that made him more excited than destroying Bihan's move. Bihan's skill was just so. The last bit of fear in his mind disappeared along with this strike. Yet at this time, he detected something, and his expression changed slightly. At some unknown time, a red seal formation that spun endlessly appeared under the feet of his battalion. In a blink, the MO soldiers that were covered by the red seal formation quickly turned into bloody puddles of liquid. Death Whirlpool. This was an unique and obscure combat formation. It had to start from death, it would activate quickly and with great power. This battle tactic was one of Sin Battalion's common tactics. However, in Xian Kong Temple's book, the life of a Sin Battalion member or multiple members were used to initiate this formation. However, Bihan took an original approach and first used a combat formation to summon a Skunda Buddha and then used the life of the Skunda Buddha to activate this formation. The Skunda Buddha was very powerful. With it as the starting material, the Death Whirlpool was unprecedentedly powerful. In an instantly, more than 300 MO soldiers turned to bloody puddles of goop without time to even wail in pain. Hai Jin-yun's eyes turned red. He hadn't thought that he would fall for Bihan's trap. "Go die!" he shouted, the great blade in his hand slicing towards Bihan's position. Golden split chop, angry wave. Boom! A golden wave roared towards Bihan. The range of this move was so great it made people feel it was unable to be avoided. Bihan's expression changed slightly. He could clearly feel the terrifying strength of this move. However, was Bihan someone that feared battle? His face became expressionless again and his figures suddenly disappeared from his spot. Almost at the same time, it seemed that there were no people left in front of the golden wave. 100 Ghost Thread Shadow Formation. Sin Battalion was special. There were countless Jinji on their bodies. These Jinji could increase their strength, bring them endless pain, and also restrain their souls. These Jinji were not a secret of Xian Kong Temple, but obscure techniques that Xian Kong Temple had gathered over thousands of years. The 100 Ghost Thread Shadow Formation was one of those. It could allow Sin Battalion to quickly move through space much faster than normal methods. A thread of a smile flashed on Hai Jin-yun's lips. While Bihan had all kinds of moves, in his eyes, this supported the fact that Bihan was just a paper tiger. A true battle general did not need to use these low-grade moves. He suddenly spun the blade in his hand. That golden wave suddenly exploded, turning into bolts of golden light that entered the Sin Battalion battle formation. Before Sin Battalion that just came out of the void could react, they were drowned by the golden light. Bihan was expressionless and was not moved by the deaths. The fighting was growing more intense, and in a full frontal assault like this, the difference between the two sides would decrease. Both sides were experienced battle generals and charging into the enemy formation was a tactic that every battle general was familiar with. It was not possible to make a mistake with battle formations of this level. Both sides were battle generals that were stronger offensively. As the battle quickly moved from intense to horrific, the fatalities piled up. Shang Yusheng carefully observed the battlefield. No detail escaped his eyes. Hai Jin-yun was the strongest offensive battle general of the MO Martial Alliance. Full-on charges like this was the best for him. He hadn't expected that Bihan was able to suppress Hai Jin-yun and still have the upper hand. While the advantage was not so great it surpassed the limits of imagination, he did have the upper hand. Charges were a basic technique for every battle general. They could not make mistakes. This meant that Bihan's fundamental skills were higher than Hai Jin-yun. However, this advantage was not so great that he could fight one-on-two. Yet why had Bihan turned the situation into this? Bihan had been the one to create the present situation. Why had Bihan done this? Shang Yusheng could only think of one explanation. Bihan believed that, even one-on-two, he could win. Did Bihan have some great move up his sleeve? Shang Yusheng was puzzled. He did not start fighting immediately. The more intense the fighting, the more beneficial it was for them. A hard battle would greatly decrease Bihan's strength. Hai Jinyun could afford to do it because he had Shang Yuxing, but Bihan could not afford it as he did not have reinforcements. The battle continued, and the slaughter still continued. Shang Yuxing could not help but feel a thread of respect, as expected of Bihan, who came from Xian Kong Temple. His tactics were exquisite, and he used all kinds of battle and seal formations expertly. He did not have any delay when he changed formations, and many of the variations were almost wondrous. However, while he admired the other, Shang Yuxing felt more assured. While Bihan's upper hand on the battlefield against Hai Jinyun grew larger, Shang Yuxing knew that victory was growing closer for himself. Hai Jinyun's battalion only had half of its members left after these exchanges, but these high losses were worth it because they were in exchange for the death of 1/3 of Sin Battalion. If a normal battalion lost 1/3 of its members, the battalion would not be far from collapsing. Yet the two battalions were unusually hardy. Hai Jinyun was almost mad from the fight, while Bihan was cold-blooded in his coolness. Shang Yuxing sighed inside. Such a powerful battle general was about to fall today. A cold light flashed through his eyes. It was time to attack. Editor's notes: I find these numbers odd. Most traditional accounts of medieval battles place casualties in battle at about 14 to 15% losses for a defeated army during the battle. The majority of deaths came after due to cavalry chasing down a routed army's infantry and infections from wounds. I find the high losses odd here, because previously FX would normally have an enemy army rout before being slaughtered to this extent. Chapter 783, Yuqin Lies Skills. The meeting with Yang Yuanhao remained a secret to everyone else. Only Zue Mo and Yang Yuanhao attended this meeting. Even the sect leader of Lotus Sutra sect excused himself. Zue Mo gained greatly in this meeting. For Mo Cloud C, they needed the 9 Great Diana sects to stop Kunlun and Tianhuan. For the 9 Great Diana sects, they also needed Mo Cloud C's support. The two had common interests and demands, so all that was left, dividing the benefits, was easy. Zue Mo was the boss of Mo Cloud C. Yang Yuanhao was the first-ranked battle general of the 9 Great Diana sect, a person with true power in the 9 Great Diana sects. Both were decision-makers for their factions. Adding on that the two both had strong strategic vision and knew where the other's bottom line was at, the process went smoothly. Through Yang Yuanhao, Zue Mo learned that the bigger sects in the 9 Great Diana sects were closer than outsiders thought. For example, the sect leader of Lotus Sutra Temple was Yang Yuanhao's paternal aunt. This kind of tangled relation caused Zue Mo to gape. However, this also eased the majority of his worries. As long as the 5 larger sects did not turn on each other and creating chaos, then the 9 Great Diana sects would not easily fall to Kunlun and Tianhuan. Zue Mo expressed his worries and fury about the sects that had been infiltrated the most heavily. Yang Yuanhao subtly implied to him that Mo Cloud C could use some methods in secret. Zue Mo quickly realized that Yang Yuanhao wanted to use him to eliminate these troubles. Yang Yuanhao himself had boundaries to his influence and he could not do many things. Zue Mo acknowledged and confirmed. While it would be troublesome, this was also an opportunity for Zue Mo. However, what surprised Zue Mo the most was that Yang Yuanhao was willing to support Zue Mo to compete for the Shun device nucleus inside the ancient ruins. Zue Mo had never thought that there would be a sect that did not desire a Shun device raiment. Little Mo Gu was a smart person and he immediately had a higher opinion of Yang Yuanhao. This person wasn't just an exceptional person. Yang Yuanhao knew the status of the 9 Great Diana sects. While a Shin device raiment was of use to the 9 Great Diana sects, it was not so important. If the 9 Great Diana sects were threatened by top factions like Kunlun and Tianhuan, Mo Cloud C would definitely not sit by. Also, the location of the 9 Great Diana sect meant it was fated to be a territory where there would be constant skirmishes. Rather than have the Shin device raiment that would not be of great use to their problems, it was better to trade it for Shin equipment which would increase the collective ability of their battalions. As expected, Yang Yuanhao raised this as his request. He wanted to use their support to trade for a shipment of Mo Cloud Shen equipment. Zhou Mo agreed without hesitation. Mo Cloud C was the exact opposite of the 9 Great Diana sects. The battalions had long ago been outfitted with Shen equipment. For them, Shen device raiments that were valuable strategic weapons that they desired the most. A shipment of Shen equipment for the rich Mo Cloud C was not a problem at all. The conversation was pleasurable. Yang Yuanhao was a person with great personal charisma. Zhou Mo noticed that Yang Yuanhao's power within the 9 Great Diana sects was stronger than he imagined. Yang Yuanhao warned him that there was an extremely high number of experts this time. Almost all of the strongest of the world had gathered, especially the Yao and Mo experts. After cultivating Shen power, the Mo and the Yao also saw the rise of a group of exceptionally powerful Shen power users. Compared to the fame of Kunlun and Tianhuan's members, no one really knew where these people came from. Any Shen device raiment was an irresistible temptation for any top Shen power user or any faction with ambition. Zhou Mo nodded seriously. He suddenly found that the exploration of the ruins this time would not be as easy as he had imagined. With the local Power Lotus Sutra temple leading the way, the traces of Zhou Mo's group were concealed. They had good intelligence. They did not attract any attention as they arrived at the border of the ruins. While there was still a few days until the ruins opened, it was possible to see people scattered in this area exploring the geography or trying to search for clues. There aren't many people. Zhou Mo was slightly happy. Naturally, the fewer people here the better. Competition would not be as fierce if there were fewer participants. The White Lotus Reverend imperceptibly glanced at him and said with a calm expression, "At the start, there were many people, but fights kept on breaking out. Some people tried to use the chaos to steal the artifacts. In one night, over 300 people died and then the population here decreased." Zhou Mo's smile froze on his face. The expressions of other people also became serious. More than 300 people dying in one night. Just these few words were enough for people to imagine the chaos and cruelty of that night. "Don't you maintain order?" Lao Guang couldn't resist asking. It had to be said that all people had their own ways. Lao Guang, this famed thief, had many unorthodox channels of information. He was likely more informed than Lotus Sutra Temple in some aspects. How can we control it? An expression of helplessness appeared on White Lotus Reverend's face. He said coolly, "Right now, the Shen power experts in this area could destroy the sect if they decided to work together." Lao Guang became silent. Zhou Mo was not surprised by this. He only rejoiced that Mo Cloud C did not have a ruin of this kind. Otherwise, regardless of whether he could get the treasure, safety would be a problem. Even in Mo Cloud C where there were many top experts, they were insignificant against all of the Shen power experts in the world. If these madmen went on a rampage, no one could survive them. "Anyone who stops us from getting rich will die," little Mo Gu said viciously. The White Lotus Reverend smiled and handed over a jade scroll. "Inside is the geography of this area. We have already explored this area. This was prepared for us originally, but we can only give it to you now." At this time, Wei Sheng suddenly turned his head. "It is best for you not to fight back. I do not mind killing you." A cold voice came from the darkness. It was ethereal and one was unable to pin their position from the voice. "Assassin." Only those assassins that moved in the darkness would give him a feeling like this. He also knew from his days as a member of the underground what level of assassin he was facing. Uncle Yan's expression was normal, and he was motionless like a statue. His expression was still calm as though he did not feel the murderous intent at his back. "Why are you doing this? Miss has not refused you." Uncle Yan's voice did not tremble at all. He seemed to be describing a simple truth. "Our time is precious." Another voice came from another direction in the darkness. This voice was light and filled with warmth and friendliness as though they were talking with an old friend. Yet Uncle Yan's eyelid flicked. He was still composed. "We need time to consider. You also know that this is a significant decision." "Actually, I don't mind kidnapping her," the soft female voice in the darkness seemed to say in a teasing tone. or send her to the bed of Elder Yi's grandnephew. Uncle Yan's heart suddenly dropped. We did not do so because she is an outstanding candidate. The voice in the darkness was still cheerful. However, you know that people in our profession never put our eggs in one basket. She is outstanding but not irreplaceable. Uncle Yan was silent, but he also knew that there was no chance now. What do you want? That's right, don't make it difficult for me. Everyone's out to make a living, why make ourselves unhappy? We only need her talent, not her body. We will protect her clan, our offer is very sincere. Other than me, I believe that no one will offer such a deal. The voice cheerfully added from the darkness, a condition like this should not be refused. Uncle Yan was a person who lived life on the edge of his blade. He could hear the others' decisiveness and strong presence. His side and their side were not on the same level. He was silent for a moment before he said, I will persuade Mississippi, great, I give you my thanks. The voice in the darkness was still so warm and friendly, yet the next sentence they said was as cruel and ruthless as a blade's edge. Boss said one thing that may make you unhappy, but for our beautiful partnership, I have decided to be honest. What words? Uncle Yan's cold sweat dripped down his back. The murderous intent from the other direction became even stronger, as though it was going to pierce into his bones. He even suspected that the other would suddenly attack in the next moment. Lambs do not qualify to negotiate with wolves. The phrase swirled like smoke. The sharp murderousness at his back slowly retreated. However, Uncle Yan was motionless like a statue. A long time later he shifted his body. His body was completely covered in sweat. Yet his face was ashen right now. The other's words right before they left hit him at his weak point like a hammer. At this time, whines suddenly came from the darkness. Uncle Yan's expression changed slightly. He shot like lightning into the darkness. In the darkness he found Song Ling Shui pale-faced, tied up and gagged. I do not like this, Nanyu said calmly. At her side, the other people also had gazes full of unfriendliness and enmity. In their view, it was too cruel of Yu Qinlai to use such terrible actions against a girl of only 17. Yu Qinlai glanced at her. It's fine if the result is the same. Are you even a person? Do you even have any kindness? You are a demon, you are a bastard. Nanyu suddenly shouted furiously at Yu Qinlai. She suddenly reached out and gripped Yu Qinlai's neck, her eyes sprouting fire. She appeared as though she wanted to snap Yu Qinlai's neck. Snap. No one saw the movement. Yu Qinlai seemed to turn into a shadow, and then the two switched positions. He had grabbed Nanyu's neck. The orange-haired Yao and the others suddenly stood up. If anyone moves, she's dead. Yu Qinlai's cold voice echoed in the hall. The orange-haired Yao and the others stopped where they were. They could hear that the other was honest. He would really kill Nanyu. Yu Qinlai expressionlessly looked over the group, intimidating them all. Chapter 784, Trump Card. Shang Yusheng's battalion was like a sharp dagger that cut through the night sky. Shang Yusheng's strategic ability was on full display. He cut in through Xin Battalion at a good angle and immediately cut a great wound in behind Xin Battalion. Xin Battalion, which had been fighting for a long time, was not able to hold up against Shang Yusheng Battalion, who were well rested. Shang Yusheng's battle style was unlike Hai Jin Yun's ferociousness. His style was more detailed. He was a rare MO battle general that was a control type. He led the battalion with ease. His body brimmed with power, yet he never attacked with great momentum but used small moves that did not seem to be strong. Yet these seemingly weak moves were unique in that they came rapidly and endlessly like the rain. These sustained attacks were more troublesome than Hai Jin Yun's attacks. Shang Yusheng's exceptional foresight and sense of strategy always allowed him to find the greatest weakness in the enemy formation. He seemed to be leading a group of ants that constantly chewed. If one was the least bit careless, they would find that, without realizing it, Shang Yusheng had destroyed a large portion of their forces. Bi Han naturally was not a weak person. Now that Shang Yusheng joined the battle, it decreased his advantage greatly, but he immediately adjusted. Xin Battalion's movements became even harder to predict. and the rate that the battle formation changed was shocking. Shang Yuxing immediately felt pressure. As expected of Bi Han, Shang Yuxing was shocked inside. He was not a beginner at battle, but it was the first time he felt such a great pressure. What roused his admiration was that Bi Han was fighting 1 against 2. In this kind of situation, Bi Han was still able to give him such great pressure. This meant that Bi Han's control of battle was great. Shang Yuxing's spirit rose. What an honor it was to fight such a powerful opponent. His gaze became even more determined, his steps more graceful. He felt that he had never been in such a great state. The entire battlefield appeared in his mind in every detail. The attacks that left his hand increased in rate. The attacks that had been like a rainstorm before were now a flood that sprouted from his hand. With the support of his entire battalion, Shang Yuxing didn't feel any tiredness. Hai Jin Yun would occasionally give a shuddering howl. He was in a frenzy. The remainders of his battalion was also fighting in a frenzy. They were fearless and seemed mad. With the 2 battle generals working together, the pressure on Bi Han increased drastically. Bi Han's cold face seemed to be carved from granite. He seemed to not notice the sudden increase in pressure and the increasing rate of battle. The remaining 2/3 of Xin battalion managed to hold off the furious attack of the 2 large battalions. The battle became unprecedentedly horrific. The 2 sides were fighting for control over the rhythm of the battle. The rhythm of the battle could not be seen or touched, but both sides knew that the side which controlled the rhythm of the battle would be closest to victory. The attacks from the 2 sides constantly changed. In the sky, the multicolored lights crisscrossed like rain. The scouts spying on this battle were stunned. They unconsciously held their breath, spells such as mirage formations sending back this scene to every corner of the Xiuzhou world. This was the first significant conflict after several years of peace. It naturally attracted the eyes of the world. After the 2 sides started to fight, all the factions sent out strong scouts to infiltrate this area in order to see and understand this battle better. The amount of manpower the 2 sides, Mo Cloud Sea and the Mo Martial Alliance, had was limited. They could block out large battalions but could not stop these small scout teams. Due to this, as the state of the conflict grew clearer, the location of the final battle was gradually discovered. The scouts of almost every power in the world gathered around Bright Mountain Jia. These outstanding scouts hid in the darkness and used methods such as mirage formations and 1,000-li water mirrors to send recordings of the battle to their territories. Innumerable eyes were watching this important battle. When the battle reached this state, everyone unconsciously held their breath. The 2 sides were at a rhythm that was astounding. The battle generals that were watching all had grave expressions and were silent as their eyes were locked onto the images. The situation is disadvantageous to Bi Han, Xue Dong said in a deep voice. However, he was already stunned that Bi Han had managed to draw out the battle until now. Mo Cloud Sea was Kunlun's greatest worry. The 2 were sworn enemies, so Kunlun paid more attention to this fight. However, up until now, what shocked Xue Dong the most was Shang Yuxing and Hai Jin Yun's strength. They were stronger than he predicted. He suddenly turned his head and ordered, "Send someone to investigate Hai Jin Yun and Shang Yuxing, especially Shang Yuxing." In his eyes, Shang Yuxing was undoubtedly a bigger threat and had more potential. Shang Yuxing's strategic vision was outstanding, and he was experienced in focused attacks. He had more room to grow. Lin Qian's gaze did not move away from the screen. He said softly, "Bi Han still has other moves?" Before he finished, the situation on the battlefield changed again. At this time, only half of Bi Han's Xin battalion was left. His fatality rate was 50% and the situation was greatly disadvantageous to Bi Han. Hai Jin Yun at this time did not care about fatalities. His intentions were clear, a life for a life. Shang Yuxing's constant barrage quickly showed their result. As Xin battalion's fatalities increased, Shang Yuxing and Hai Jin Yun's advantage in manpower became even more evident. Bi Han's Xin battalion was outnumbered by the 2 other battalions to start with. If he wanted to win, he had to preserve his forces and reduce the number of losses. Shang Yuxing and Hai Jin Yun both knew this. Hai Jin-yun was using a suicidal method to increase Bihan's Sin Battalion losses. Up until now, their goal had been realized well. A fatality rate of 50% was the highest fatality rate in the history of Sin Battalion. The remaining Sin Battalion soldiers were not completely uninjured. Most of their Shin equipment was in pieces. This meant that they could be more easily wounded and killed. Yet Bihan's expression was still cold and immovable. Just as many people thought that Bihan's defeat was certain, a dark light suddenly came from the bodies of the remaining Sin Battalion members. Countless dark red seal scripts were like a crowd of earthworms that swam around their body. The gray-white eyes of Sin Battalion soldiers were still empty and gray, yet their presence exploded. "It's here!" Gongya Xiaorong, who had been silent all this time, couldn't help but say. Li Xian turned around and looked with surprise at Xiaorong Xixiang. It seemed that Xixiang cared very much about Mo Cloud C. The bodies of the Sin Battalion soldiers inflated like balloons. Their muscles became thick and strong at a stunning rate, their bodies multiplying in size, their Shin equipment broken apart. Scales grew out of their hands, some had horns growing out of their heads, some had sickled tails, some had spines growing from their backs. Everyone who saw this inhaled in shock. Mo physique. Each member of Sin Battalion had a Mo physique. Only now did people remember Sin Battalion's origins. They had been Mo hostages that Xian Kong Temple had captured from all places and made from the elite among them. The blow of this scene was even greater to Mo battle generals. This was the first time they saw everyone in a battalion have Mo physiques. Seeing the flowing light on the bodies of Sin Battalion, they were stunned. While they had entered the era of Shin power and a Mo physique was not as valuable as in the past, it was still a shock when every person in a battalion had a Mo physique. Those smarter found that the Mo physiques of Sin Battalion soldiers clearly had traces of Shin power. The inscription skill of Mo Cloud C was famed in the world. Adding on Mo Cloud C's study of Shin power, this was actually normal. This was a trap. The personages that watched this fight felt cold creep up their backs. Bihan was so devious, so cold-blooded. To lure Shang Yuxing into the battle, he had sacrificed half of Sin Battalion. This was a person who could do anything for victory. This was a terrifying battle general that was cold and ruthless. The strong pressure came like a mountain to cover the entire battlefield. The balance immediately had tilted to Bihan's side. Sin Battalion's Mo physiques were not just Mo physique. Their attacks became even stronger. The battle formation with Shin power added was unstoppable. The Sin Battalion soldiers started to fight head-on. Their attacks became ferocious. In a blink, almost all of Hai Jin-yun's battalion was gone. "Is this your trump card?" Shang Yusheng's eyes flashed and a cold smile floated at the corner of his lips. He had expected long ago that Bihan definitely had other cards up his sleeve. Otherwise, planning to fight 1 against 2 was a joke. Looking at Sin Battalion that had immediately multiplied in their ferocity, Shang Yusheng's gaze was admiring. Mo Cloud C's inscription skill lived up to the rumors. However, this stopped here. Shang Yusheng's gaze locked onto Bihan that flickered in and out of view among the Sin Battalion fighters. He was like an experienced hunter that stared at his prey that was about to fall into the trap. He had always felt great confidence in this battle because he found long ago that Bihan's Sin Battalion that caused people to lose their guts at the name had a nondescript weakness. This nondescript weakness would not show up usually, but in battles of this level, it was enough to be fatal. Sin Battalion did not have a top-level fighter. Usually, the powerful Sin Battalion was enough to protect Bihan. Yet now, Sin Battalion only had half of its members left. The strong defensive net was filled with holes even though the Sin Battalion soldiers had become more powerful. Shang Yuxing had been constantly searching for a time to give a fatal blow. When Bihan's last trump card was revealed, he didn't hesitate any longer. With a long roar, the space around him suddenly boiled, his hair dancing like a swarm of snakes. Power gathered towards him like a tide. The boiling space around him was like a bottomless monster that greedily sucked in the flood of power the battalion channeled towards him. Everyone was stunned by this sudden change. Even Hai Jin-yun, who had been fighting hard, was stunned. Almost everyone thought that Shang Yuxing was a rare control-type MO battle general. Even Hai Jinyun thought this. Who would have thought that Shang Yuxing had hit his strength? He was also a classical MO battle general with outstanding individual strength. Shang Yuxing's face flashed with eerie light, his eyes flashing. He found a hidden pathway crisscrossing through Xin Battalion's ranks. His presence reached a peak. With a roar of laughter, he headed straight towards Bihan like a blade. Xin Battalion members along the way leapt at Shang Yuxing. Yet before they could go near, they were thrown back out into the air. Everyone knew. Bihan was finished. At this time, a red-colored raiment appeared on Bihan's body. He turned his face as though he felt it. In the gray-white eyes of every Xin Battalion member, a thread of furious dark red flame jumped at the same time. Chapter 785. Bihan Shang Yusheng felt a stirring suddenly rise. He raised his head in shock and saw a scene that he would never forget. Ball of flame flew out of the bodies of Xin Battalion to rise into the sky like blooming flowers. In this moment, thousands of balls of flame filled his vision. They seemed to slowly fly towards Bihan dressed in red armor. The red armor on Bihan suddenly lit up with profound and complex scripts. In a blink, the flames in the sky entered Bihan's red armor. An angry red mark appeared on Bihan's forehead. The red armor moved as though it was alive, feathers shaped like tongues of flame growing at a stunning rate on the red armor. Bihan's face, neck and other exposed body parts were filled with many icy blue scripts. Those were the Jinji that had been placed back at Xian Kong Temple. The icy blue and the furious red formed a breathtaking scene filled with stunning beauty. Some with keener eyes noticed the changes in Bihan under the red armor. While Bihan's figure had not changed greatly, there were some tiny changes. Shang Yusheng also found these changes. Suddenly, he thought of Xin Battalion's change just now and his expression changed drastically. Shui Dong did not disguise the shock he felt. He stared hard at the flaming red armor that Bihan wore, uncontrollable desire showing in his eyes. He murmured to himself, Shen device raiment. A battle general Shen device raiment. Lin Qian was similarly shocked. I hadn't thought that Mo Cloud C would give their first Shen device raiment to Bihan. Great courage. Great vision. He had to admit Zhuomo's strength. Mo Cloud C's first Shen device was given to Bihan. A battle general Shen device raiment, this was the first one. Zhuomo's choices were always unlike other people. When all the other powers chose to forge Shen device raiments for the strongest member of their faction, he gave the Shen device to outfit a battle general. A seemingly daring choice was of great and crucial effect at this moment. People could not understand Zhuo Lin Qian had a strong feeling of danger. The Mo Cloud C led by Zhuo was definitely the biggest enemy to Kunlun other than Tian Huan. Lin Qian suddenly thought of something and his expression changed slightly. Bihan is Shui Dong stilled. When he reacted, his expression changed minutely as well. Bihan was No one would have thought that this information that everyone knew was now the deciding factor in this battle. Bihan was Mo. He grew up in Xian Kong Temple, and due to his outstanding talent, he was put in charge of Xin Battalion. Bihan was a rare Mo who used Xiuzhe methods as a battle general. At this time, everyone understood this detail they had missed was so crucial. Xin Battalion could be modified to have Mo physiques. What about Bihan? From a famed family, Bihan had an outstanding bloodline. Mo Cloud C's inscription art had the power to express the power in his bloodline. Bihan, whose bloodline power had been uncovered, would skyrocket in individual power. His individual strength could probably match those of normal gold Mo battle generals. Yet this was not the most terrifying thing. More terrifying was that this meant Bihan could learn Mo fighting tactics. Bihan would become a battle general that could use Mo and Xiuzhe methods. For a battle general of Bihan's level, any extra variation in tactics meant that he was that much more adaptable. His strength and the danger he posed would increase drastically. And a whole other method of fighting? No one knew. Because this had never happened before. There had never been a battle general of Bihan's level that had skill in two styles. Sin Battalion, this wondrous battalion, gave Bihan great help because Sin Battalion was made out of Emo. Bihan and Sin Battalion were perfectly matched. This meant that Bihan could command Sin Battalion to realize two completely different ways of fighting. It would be a headache even if it was a normal battle general that could do this. And if it was a top battle general like Bihan, how great would the advantage be? Many people didn't even dare to think. Lin Xian knew that with Swamo's personality, he definitely would not ignore Bihan's advantage. Bihan's Shin device raiment would have been forged with this in mind. This Shin device raiment. The suddenly change caught Shang Yusheng off guard. However, after the initial panic, he quickly calmed down. His expression became calm again even though the presence that Bihan gave off now immediately suppressed his. Yet Shang Yusheng's mind was unusually calm. He was patient. He had cultivated his individual strength yet never showed it for many years. He practiced control-type tactics, but he still did all he could to make up for his shortcoming. He never stopped perfecting himself. The hard practice and sweat of many days and months caused his mind to be as strong as stone. He knew that at this point, it was proven that Bihan was more outstanding him. Both sides had played their cards and Bihan's hand was better. He had been mistaken. Yet he could not retreat now. Other than fighting with his back to the wall, he did not have any other choice. Their battalions were entangled together and if he retreated at this time, there would only be one result. They would all be killed. Shang Yusheng's gaze burned with fighting spirit. The pride and bravery all Mo battle generals had made him fearless. Since everyone's trump card was played, then what was left was to fight. The possibility that he could win this fight was very small, but even if not for victory, he had enough reason to fight, for his pride. For his battalion. He was Shang Yusheng. Shang Yusheng's expression was calm as he fearless burned the power inside. No one knew that his tongue had been bitten to pieces in his mouth. Vast Shun power accompanied by the thick tang of blood flowed like lava through his body. Standing with his hands by his side, Shang Yusheng's presence skyrocketed. The rising presence and his fearless intent to fight to the death filled every corner of the battlefield. Even the people watching from the mirages changed expression. The Mo under Shang Yusheng's command seemed to be struck by lightning. These men that seemed to be made from steel looked dazedly at the sky, at that proud and decisive Shang Yusheng shining. That was their commander that gave them glory and hope. Tears rolled down the upraised faces. Darren! Numerous angry shouts and grieving wails sounded from the battlefield. They knew that Darren intended to fight to the death. Suddenly, a Mo marshal wiped away his tears and shouted, "Fight with Darren!" Suddenly, blood sprouted out of his body in a dozen places, the light surrounding him multiplying in intensity. Frantic power raged inside his body. He grunted but did not waver. In order to create the image that he was a control type, Shang Yusheng had a Mo marshal in his battalion that had lead the attacks in his place. "Fight with Darren! Fight with Darren!" Blood spurted, shouts and blinding balls of light rising. Each ball of light was like a furious flame that burning with anything left behind, life burned to create Shin power, burning their lives for that commander in the sky that gave them glory and hope. Light rose from the burning Mo soldiers and flew towards Shang Yusheng in the sky. The power inside Shang Yusheng increased at a stunning rate. He looked down at the quickly dimming balls of light under him. The figure of the Mo soldiers that fell to their deaths after offering him all of their power. Tears blurred his vision. Suddenly, an angry shout rang over the battlefield. It was Hai Jin Yun. Countless furious flows of air spun rapidly around his body. He was like a blinding meteor that howled as he shot towards Bihan like a moth to a flame. Shang Yusheng's heart felt a stab of pain. Bihan opened his eyes again. Facing Hai Jin Yun charging at him, he was expressionless. Yet the armor he wore, arsonist, was like a burning flame. The two opposite presences of coolness and fire wondrously merged into one. He was like a piece of ice wrapped in furious flames. He coolly pointed and stabbed towards Hai Jin Yun flying towards him. Puff! A deep beat seemed to explode in people's minds. The ground also shook. The space in front of Bi-Han seemed to be an invisible wall that rippled. Hai Jin-yun seemed to be hit by an invisible hammer head-on. Before he could make any adjustments, Hai Jin-yu exploded like a ball of fire. The light around him was shattered, turning into fragments that disappeared into the air. Hai Jin-yun fell from the sky without any signs of life. Everyone in watching the mirages was intimidated. Their expressions changed. The hard battle before had proved that Hai Jin-yun had the strength of a top battle general. Yet the death of a top battle general was so simple. How could people not be intimidated? Kuan Luan and Tian Huan felt as though there was a dagger at their backs. Bi-Han was so powerful. Bi-Han did not have any joy on his expression. Hai Jin-yun was at the end of his rope, his battalion completely gone, his energy spent. For MO battle generals, the battalion was the source of their strength. If the battalion was strong, the battle general would be stronger. There wasn't even 20% of Hai Jin-yun battalion left. All of them were tired and void of power. The power that they could gather on Hai Jin-yun was almost insignificant. In order to realize this goal, Sin Battalion had made a great sacrifice. Using up Hai Jin-yun's power, producing the illusion of a hard-fought battle, luring Shang Yuxing into the fight, all of that had come at the expense of Sin Battalion sacrifices. Bi-Han had not expected that Shang Yuxing was also skilled in traditional MO fighting methods. He had originally planned to use his individual strength to make a surprise move and ambush him. If he could kill Shang Yuxing, he would win. He hadn't expected Shang Yuxing to be so strong. More importantly, Shang Yuxing's battalion was almost completely untouched. Yet Shang Yuxing was able to immediately understand the situation after detecting Bi-Han's threat, advancing instead of retreating for a fight to the death. Such a powerful opponent. Bi-Han's cold eyes filled with fighting spirit. Chapter 786, Arsonist. The two burning balls of light. The two battle generals faced off in the sky. Bi-Han's aura gave off furious red flames. Shang Yuxing's aura gave off deep blue waves. This battle had progressed unexpectedly to all, Bi-Han and Shang Yuxing being the greatest surprises. Bi-Han was ranked 10th of the top battle generals in the Xiuzhou world. No one would underestimate his strength. Yet Sin Battalion's changes, and Bi-Han's MO fighting method, as well as the angry flaming arsonist he wore was a great shock to people. Just as people thought that Bi-Han's last trump card was played, Bi-Han would then play another, each a better card. Shang Yuxing's strength had been underestimated until now. His display up to this point was outstanding. He definitely had the strength of a top battle general. The reason that he was in such a sorry state was just because he fought Bi-Han. He was in a sorry state, but it did not mean that he did not have a chance. Bi-Han had the advantage, but this did not mean that he had victory in his grasp. The final battle. Shang Yuxing was the first to act. His figure flashed and he appeared near Bi-Han. Blinding blue energies vented out and seemed as though they were about to drown Bi-Han. Bi-Han seemed to have expected this and reached out with a swat of his hand. The red energy of his hand formed an enormous flaming hand that slammed against the blue flood. Boom! Countless fragments of energy swirled and fell from the sky, raining down to the ground. The two were fast like bolts of lightning, red and blue. They continued to collide at a speed hard to follow with the naked eye. They would immediately separate after each collision. Boom boom boom. The ear-deafening explosions were like thunder. Sparks would fly each time the two met. Sprays of dazzling red and blue energies shot into the sky. Such great power! Li Xian Air couldn't resist sighing in shock. The two people in the mirage were inhuman. They were like two meteors crashing into each other repeatedly. The MO battle generals that gathered the power of the entire battalion were so strong they outshone all experts. She had seen MO battle generals before, and MO fighting was like this. However, the power coming from these two people still shocked her. As one of the strongest of Tian Huan, she was individually strong, but she still felt intimidated by the strength the two displayed. So battle generals could be this strong. Gongya Xiaorong's expression was grave. In terms of savagery, the fighting of the MO is first. However, the strength of these two is rare even among the MO in the Mirage. The attacking rhythm of the two accelerated. It was so fast one could only see a red and blue bolt of lightning flashing across the sky. Xianxia made a soft sound of surprise. They are improving. Improving. Gongya Xiaorong stilled. Yes, both of them are improving. Xianxia was powerful and she could see the changes in this level of battle more clearly. Gongya Xiaorong quickly understood. They are adjusting to this kind of fighting. Both Bihan and Shang Yusheng do not usually fight like this. After this battle, Bihan will be more terrifying. The MO Martial Alliance has suffered great losses this time with the death of two top battle generals at once. Even we would not be able to afford such a price. Tianhuan and the MO Martial Alliance were on good terms. While there was no open relations, there was close contact in secret. Gongzi she still felt great affection for Xianxia, but the present Xianxia was not the Xianxia from when they had first met. Xianxia was now one of the core members of Tianhuan. She didn't need to help Tianhuan through a method like a marriage alliance. Xianxia thought and then said, MO Cloud C's losses this time are also heavy. After this fight, Sin Battalion loses at least half their numbers. It is worth it to use half of Sin Battalion in exchange for two top battle generals, Gongya Xiaorong said without hesitation. Xianxia suddenly thought of a problem. Sin Battalion is a strange battalion. If there are losses, how is it supposed to be replenished? Gongya Xiaorong stilled and then had an expression of joy. Yes. Sin Battalion cannot be replenished, it is pretty much crippled now. Even if Bihan has the Shun device raiment, he cannot make another Sin Battalion. Without Sin Battalion, Bihan's strength is greatly reduced. Bihan's fighting method means that only a strange battalion like Sin Battalion is suitable for him. In other words, does this mean that MO Cloud C did not have any gains? Xianxia's expression was puzzled. Then why did they start this campaign? Also, wouldn't Bihan think of this problem? Gongya Xiaorong's smile froze on his face. They definitely have ways to replenish Sin Battalion. Lin Qian's tone was full of confidence. The attention he paid towards Swa Mo and his understanding of the other far surpassed other people. In his impression, Swa Mo definitely would not approve a plan that resulted in such a loss. Shui Dong frowned. Would they dare to capture Mo to reforge Sin Battalion? That is something taboo. If it is discovered, there will be endless consequences. MO Cloud C has so many MO, they definitely cannot accept such a matter. Not that. Lin Qian shook his head. In my understanding, Zwa Mo definitely would not make such a fatal mistake. He definitely has other methods. Other methods? Shui Dong had a curious expression. He was strong in war, but he understood very little of these things. I don't know. Lin Qian shook his head honestly. But I know that they definitely have a way. If that's true, then Bihan is terrifying. Shui Dong looked at the mirage, brimming with fighting spirit. It was so enjoyable to watch a battle of this level. How great would it be if he was participating in this battle? Bihan and Shang Yusheng's fighting reached a white-hot level. The two maintained their furious pace as though they did not know exhaustion. They abandoned all finesse and would collide fully each time. They had continued to attack at such a mad tempo for 4 whole hours. People could not see their figures clearly. There was only the endless explosion and eruptions of light. The scouts watching from far had ashen expressions. For safety, they had already retreated far away, but they could still feel the tremors of the ground and the shock waves of air. 2 freaks. Everyone was filled with terror. It was the first time Bihan was using this fighting method in actual battle. The enjoyable feeling made his blood almost boil. Without any technique, without any thoughts, only the simplest and crudest collisions. The arsonist was like a burning flame that continued to stimulate the Shun power inside him. His Shin power became even hotter. It turned into explosive flames when it was channeled into the arsonist. It flowed along the armor and became even hotter. Then it would gather on Bihan's hands and turn into attacks. This was the arsonist, that Zhuo Mo had designed for Bihan. Zhuo Mo's thinking had been simple. The abilities of arsonist were also simple. It would burn Bihan's Shen power and amplify it to be even more furious, increasing its strength. Bihan was not truly a top expert. His power came from his battalion. Exquisite Shen techniques were not of great value to Bihan. He only needed to use the simplest and most straightforward attacking methods. There was only one aim: for him to have enough power to deal a fatal attack at the crucial moment. The burning Shen power was unusually savage and most suited for such simple and straightforward attacks. Yet furious Shen power demanded greatly of one's mental resilience. Bihan's almost obsessive absolute calm was the best for using arsonist. When equipment was at the Shen device raiment level, even the simplest of abilities would become unusually terrifying in strength. Arsonist was, like its name, furious and rebellious. Only Bihan could control it. Bihan's almost obsessive calm showed its power. Even in such a high attacking tempo, and when his body felt as though it was burning, he still detected that Shang Yusheng's attacks were slowly weakening. Without any hesitation, Bihan increased his attacking rhythm again. In this kind of battle, there was no room to dodge. Other than attack, there was no other choice. When Bihan sped up his attack rate, Shang Yusheng had to increase as well. The collisions of the two became even stronger. There were already experts watching the mirages that detected the battle was reaching its end. They unconsciously straightened. The collisions that abandoned all technique were crude and direct. If one side could not keep up, the momentum would quickly tilt. Shang Yusheng's speed clearly slowed down. The light around him grew much dimmer. His Shen equipment was already in pieces. The skin exposed to the air was filled with small wounds. Bihan's attacks became even stronger. He bombarded Shang Yusheng from different angles, and Shang Yusheng quickly seemed to be wavering. With every collision, Shang Yusheng's ball of light would tremble and grow a fraction dimmer. When it reached this moment, anyone with eyes could see that victory and defeat had been determined. A cold light flashed through Bihan's eyes, and his speed increased again. Completely unable to keep up with the rhythm, Shang Yusheng seemed to be hit head-on by a meteor. Boom! The blue energies flew. Shang Yusheng smashed into the ground and created a large crater in the ground. Bihan flew into the large crater like a streak of fire. When Bihan's fiery figure appeared in the sky again, there was a person gripped in his hand. Shang Yusheng was dead. His expression before death was calm. In front of the mirages, everyone lost the interest in talking. Seeing two top battle generals fall in such a short span of time was a great blow to everyone. Bihan silently floated in the air. The bright red flames wrapped around his body, but his eyes were so cold they were still. After making sure that Shang Yusheng was dead, he once again landed beside the crater and placed Shang Yusheng's body into the crater. His hands waved lightly towards the sides of the crater, and the earth on the two sides of the crater exploded. Soil rained down and buried Shang Yusheng. After doing all this, Bihan stood and looked towards the battlefield. There was less than half of Xin battalion standing on the battlefield. Bihan suddenly reached out with his right hand. Countless wisps of flame flew out and landed on the corpses of Xin battalion members on the ground. In a flash, the corpses turned to dust. There was a red bead within each mound of dust. Bihan beckoned with his hand. The red beads in the mounds of ash seemed to receive a summons, flying into his hands and disappearing. After cleaning up, Bihan suddenly looked around to the edge of the battlefield. His cold eyes caused everyone in front of the mirages to feel great killing intent. He suddenly made a gesture that no one had expected. Looking coldly into the mirage, he raised his hand and drew a finger lightly over his neck. A throat slash. That you're tuning into the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.